Commissioner McDonald,
Present.
Commissioner Hall,
Present.
Commissioner Johnson, Vice Mayor Butler,
Present.
Mayor Anderson.
Present. Item number 3 is prayer and pledge. Vice Mayor Butler.
Lord, we meet today on matters of business. Guide our hearts and our minds in the spirit of fairness, right thought, and speech. Impart your supreme wisdom upon our activities so our affairs may reach a successful conclusion. Thank you for being our source of guidance today. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item number 4 is Mayor's comments. I would like to thank Officer Tiffany Fry for being here, keeping us safe tonight. And she's one of our newest hires, so we welcome you to City Police Department. It's a great one. And also Sergeant Hill for running our metal detector tonight. We welcome everyone here. We love it when you come and you're a part of our meeting because we like to hear what you have to say. Also, if everyone will please make sure you speak into the mics. We have a lot of people at home that watch our meetings, and they can't hear unless you speak right into the mics. I've got a voice that projects, but not everybody does. Some people's voices are softer than mine, so just make sure you speak into the mic. And if you come to the podium and that mic is acting up, we'll get an alternate mic for you. So with that, we'll... Before we approve the agenda, I have 2 items that I'd like for the board to consider. One is add on as item 11G, Resolution 28-24, requested by our Fire Chief Hughes, and it's an agreement for records management software in-house. So we'll add that as 11G. And then the other is under new business 11E, ordinance 24-11 will be sent back to the Planning Commission after new information has been discovered. So with that, okay, thank you. Any questions or anything from the board? Ms. Jones?
Commissioner Johnson,
Aye.
Commissioner Hall,
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Butler,
Aye.
Mayor Anderson.
Aye. Item number 5 passes 5-0. Item number 6 is citizens' comments.
There are none tonight, Mayor.
Thank you. Item number 7 is public announcements, awards, and recognition. City events with Richard Ross.
Good evening. I have a couple things that I need to go over. This Friday, we're going to be having the groundbreaking ceremony at City Center Development, just right behind us, or right beside us at 10 a.m. We're asking everyone to please park over here at City Hall, and it's going to be next to City Hall as well. And the mayor will be speaking about that a little bit more later, I'm sure. And the next thing that we have is this Saturday, we're having the fishing rodeo at Veterans Park, and it starts at 6 a.m. for registration. Fishing begins at 7 a.m. until noon. And then that evening, we're going to be having the movie in the park, which will be at Bowie Nature Park, located behind the playground, and that will begin at 8 p.m. And then next Wednesday, June the 12th, we're going to have business networking with coffee here at City Hall, and we're welcoming all businesses, leaders to come out. It is going to be from 8:30 a.m. till 9:30 a.m. And the next thing that you'll notice on the schedule, the summer movie night for June 22nd. If you notice in weeks past, it was June the 15th, but due to a scheduling conflict, we had to move it to June 22nd. And that will be at Bowie Nature Park as well. And then next Thursday, June the 13th, we'll have a night hike at Bowie Nature Park as well at 8:30 p.m. at shelter number 1. And the last thing that I have is we're getting ready for July 3rd event. We have a total of 36 sponsors, with our main sponsor being Stern Property Partners and Celsius Energy Drink. So we're asking everyone to come on out. The gates open at 3 p.m. Fireworks will begin at 9:30 p.m. And the first band will take stage at approximately 3:30 p.m. And that will be Resurrection Journey Tribute. And then we'll have Kobe Oakley to begin at approximately 5 p.m. And the mayor will be giving out awards to all veterans. So we're asking for all veterans to come on out for that award ceremony as well. And then following Kobe Oakley's performance at 7 p.m., we'll have Rubik's Groove performing from 7 until 9:30. That's all I have tonight, Mayor.
Thank you. Item number 7 is public I'm sorry, I just did that one. Item number 8, staff comments and monthly reports. Our city manager, Mr. Daugherty.
Thank you, Mayor, Board. Two things I had on my list tonight have been taken, but I did want to say that we have been working on preparation for a mobile command center, and we're really proud and excited about this. This unit, it's kind of like I look at it as kind of like a transformer. It folds up but it's got 2 really outstanding air conditioners, and we're hoping we're going to use this for the performers at the July 3rd to cool off, but we're going to set it up early in the week, and I'm sure Chief Humphreys is going to give all of you an invite to come out and take a little tour sometime during the week. But there's only 4 of these units made, and 3 of them are in Afghanistan. So it's kind of a neat little. I think y'all will enjoy the tour. But thank you.
Anything from the board for the city manager? Okay. Item number 9, consent agenda. A, minutes from May 16th, 2024, Board of Commissioner regular meeting.
Approval.
Second.
Ms. Jones?
Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald? Commissioner Hall?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Butler?
Aye.
Mayor Anderson?
Aye. Item 9 passes 5-0. Item 10, old business. A, budget fiscal year 2025. We will open for the public hearing if anyone would like to speak. Seeing none, we will close the public hearing. A2, second and final reading, ordinance 20-2408, an ordinance of the City of Fairview, Tennessee, adopting the annual budget and tax rate for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2024, and ending June 30, 2025. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor, Board. There have been no changes from the first read, and again, there's no change in the property tax rate.
Approval.
Second.
Ms. Jones?
Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
Commissioner Hall?
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Butler?
Aye.
Mayor Anderson?
Aye. Item 10A passes 5-0. Item 10B, Resolution 23-24, resolution of the Board of Commissioners of the City of Fairview, Tennessee, authorizing the mayor to execute a right-of-way easement for Middle Tennessee Electric. And we have a representative for this item. And that would, I'll hand it over to Mr. Greer, our city planner.
Middle Tennessee Electric has requested an easement through a City of Fairview-owned parcel at the corner of Elrod Road and Northwest Highway. This would bring three-phase power to several developments along the northwest corridor and allow them to move forward with their construction.
Approval?
Second.
Any questions of Mr. Cavender from the board? Ms. Jones?
Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald?
Aye.
Commissioner Hall?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Butler?
Aye.
Mayor Anderson?
Aye. Thank you. Item 10B passes 5-0. Item 11, new business. 11A, Resolution 25-24, a resolution accepting the bid proposal for mowing and trimming services and authorizing the city manager to execute related documents and contracts for services.
Motion
Mr.
to
Dart, sorry. Go ahead.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Mr. Darty.
Thank you, Mayor, Board. We had three companies reply to our bid. We awarded it to Greenway Landscaping. They were within $55 of the lowest bid. The reasons we chose Greenway is because they're local. They have 8 employees and they have commercial accounts. The other two companies were out of town, and one company had no commercial accounts and only 2 employees. The other company was located probably about 45 minutes away, and so we felt like Greenway was the best responsible bidder in this process.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Ms. Jones?
Commissioner McDonald?
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
Commissioner Hall?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Butler? Mayor Anderson?
Aye. 11A passes 5-0. 11B, Resolution 26-24, a resolution awarding the bid to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder, Jimmy Mangrum Construction, for the installation of concrete at the Historical Village.
Approval?
Second.
Mr. Darty?
Thank you, Mayor Board. We only had 2 companies bid. They were very comparable. Mr. Mangum's company was the lowest bid, and he is local. We have a lot of experience with their work, and we feel like they will do a good job. This is also a project in, of course, in Historical Village. We're wanting to get this work done with quality but quickly for a grant that needs to be have some invoices in order to keep the grant. So, thank you.
And I'd like to thank Dr. Neil Rice. He was the one that acquired this grant for our historical village. The parking has been desperately needed. We've been parking in the grass when we meet out there, and this is going to alleviate that. So this is actually a really good acquisition. Any questions from the board?
Mayor, if you could just, the synopsis, how many parking spots, where? I don't think we've ever seen any drawings or information on it.
Mr. Darty? I mean, I know, but you can speak to it if you'd like.
Wish I had it right
Okay.
in front of me, but I believe on the right side, I know there's on
the
the left
parking-
side, there's
In the rear of
space
the
for
building,
4 buses. And I believe it's between 25 and 30 spaces to the right. Is that
Yeah,
what
so
you're?
it's if you're on Westview Drive, all of this parking is in the what I would consider the rear of the building, the rear of the Triangle School, and to the right of Triangle School, and then bus parking on the left. Anything else? Ms. Jones?
Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
Commissioner Hall?
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Butler?
Aye.
Mayor Anderson?
Aye. Item 11B passes 5-0. 11C, ordinance 24-09, an ordinance to amend the zoning ordinance of the City of Fairview, Tennessee by rezoning 2.59 acres of property located at 7113 Hill Hughes Road, consisting of Williamson County Tax Map 022, parcel 071.01, from RS40, single-family residential, to R20, 1 and 2 family residential. Property owner Annette Bellier. And if anyone's here to represent this property, please come forward. We're going to turn this over to our city planner, Mr. Greer.
Ms. Bellier submitted to the planning office a rezoning request to go from RS40 to R20, which would be a minimum 40,000 square foot lot down to a minimum 20,000 square foot lot. Her property consists of approximately 2.59 acres. She eventually is seeking to subdivide her property so that her friend can build a home next door to her. The condition of approval with the Planning Commission was that it would be on this board meeting for a first hearing, and then for the public hearing and second and final reading would be on July the 11th. It also received a recommendation from the Planning Commission for a positive recommendation for approval.
I will make a motion to approve and note that I will be voting for this, but Hill Hughes was my great-grandfather.
Oh, really? Oh, thank you. Great.
Second.
Any questions from the board? Ms. Jones?
Commissioner Johnson,
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald,
Aye.
Commissioner Hall,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Butler,
Aye.
Mayor Anderson.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 11C passes 5-0. Item 11D, ordinance 2024-10, an ordinance to amend Title IV, Chapter 2, Personal Rules and Regulations, and to adopt the Fairview Policy Manual for the City of Fairview, Tennessee. City Manager, Mr. Daugherty.
Thank you, Mayor Board. This is a project we've been working on for over a year now, and we've got several issues that we're addressing with this new policy manual. The first is, and probably I don't know, the first two are I think the most important. But if any of you have developed policy, it's one thing to develop a policy; it's another thing to review it, update it, keep up with all the laws. And with going through Lexipol, it's automatic reviews and automatic updates. Also, anybody that's dealt in any HR knows that if you have a policy, it's great, but if you haven't trained it on it, you might as well not have the policy. So this allows us to electronically train our employees on all policies. Also, it's very comprehensive. So I'm very happy with it. We sent out the policy manual to you guys about a month ago, and I believe it will serve the city well. Thank you.
Mayor, if I could ask a question,
Sure.
very, very extensive. Is there anything in the manual that prohibits a city employee from running for office? I know we discussed this over a year ago and took that out of a document, so I'm just making sure this didn't put it back in.
Under state law, there is. Under state law, there is. An employee can't serve as a alderman or a commissioner on the Board of Commissioners. A Board of Commissioner can be hired by the city, but they can't run for it. Once they're hired by the city, they can't run for reelection.
So it doesn't apply to county commissioners, is what you're saying, only city commissioners?
I didn't research it as far as county commissioners. I researched it as far as city commissioners.
Can you give me the TCA statute?
Rachel may have it because she sent it to me this week to get an opinion. Do you have it there? I can probably find it on my phone.
Yeah, it's in my email. I can.
I've got it on my desk as well.
And do we know when that changed?
It's state law. I don't know when. I think I've researched it 5 years ago for Spring Hill, and it was the same law 5 years ago. So I don't know.
Johnson, if I may just piggyback off that, just for clarification, on curiosity, does that mean if you're an employee, you can run, you just have to resign if you win? Or does that mean you cannot run and as being an employee?
Under state law, a commissioner can be employed by the city but would not be eligible for reelection. Furthermore, the official would be conflicted out of being able to participate in any matter that had anything at all to do with their employment for the city. This would be a substantial detriment for the city. It's best practice not to do it. I don't think I have the, let's see, it's 6/20/24, I believe. No, that's not it. That's the minutes. I'm sorry.
That would be today.
Yeah, no, I'm reading the wrong number. I don't believe I have it here on my phone.
The TCA is 7/51/1501.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. So it would just prohibit reelection unless, like he just said, they resign their position. If they were elected, they could resign.
If they were elected and then they want to work for the city, they could either keep serving
One or the other.
their position until it was time to be reelected, and they couldn't run for reelection. But it would conflict them out of voting on anything that had to do with that particular employment or position. So if they worked for a department, for example, say it was Parks and Rec, then that commissioner who worked for Parks and Rec could not vote on anything having to do with Parks and Rec.
But you are certain the way it's written, it says, it says you can't serve, or it says you can't run?
It says you can't run for reelection. Yes, I'm certain about it.
Right.
It's worded very particularly.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Move for approval.
Second?
I have one question. I know that there was, at some point, there was added where if someone was fired, they would have a hearing before the board. Was that removed?
That is removed, but there is state law that police officers have to go through a hearing process, but I would be the final hearing officer.
And I do want to state that I'm in favor of that being removed. So I just wanted to make sure.
Yes, it was removed with the original MTS, and it still remains removed with this manual.
Okay. Any other questions of Mr. Darty? Ms. Jones?
Commissioner Johnson,
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald,
Aye.
Commissioner Hall,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Butler,
Aye.
Mayor Anderson.
Aye. Item 11D passes 5-0. Item 11E has been removed. And item 11F, Resolution 27-24, a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of the City of Fairview, Tennessee, authorizing the mayor to execute the Northwest Highway Development Agreement. City Planner, Mr. Greer.
The agreement before you tonight has been revised since we last met. The developer has increased their contribution to our Northwest Highway project from $2.5 million to $2,750,000. Substantially, the contract language is very similar, with one noted change that was discussed during the previous conversation at the last meeting, that noted the contribution be $2,750,000 or the cost of the project if less. And that was added, that was discussed at our last board meeting, and that was added in as language in this contract.
Whoever would like to represent for this project, if you could come forward, please. Ethan, do you have your pointer with you? Unfortunately, I had my car cleaned and mine was taken out. And if we could get a map that's better than this one that shows all the way from Highway 96 to Belvoir, I'd appreciate that.
Keith, if you can go to the document that we verified was in here before. That document, please. Thank you.
Do you have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, now we'll open for discussion.
Any presentation or just straight to
They're
questions?
waiting on me, Mayor Anderson. Mayor Anderson, you're waiting on me?
I'm going to speak
Okay.
last, so anybody who
Sure.
wants to speak first, that'd be fine.
Well, my name is Sean Henry, 500 11th Avenue, Nashville, and I represent D.R. Horton. Good to see you all again. I think the last time I was here maybe was December. This particular slide is not ours. I think that's your staff slide, so staff might be able to walk you through all of that. What I thought might be helpful, and the Belhaven matter has been in front of the Planning Commission and this board numerous times over many years, and we prepared just a quick little summary, and I just want to highlight it because when this particular property was rezoned in 2006 to the RM8 PUD overlay, there were only two commissioners on the board at that time, Commissioner Johnson and Commissioner Hall. And so three of you weren't here back then. And so there's been an evolution of that property. And going back to 2008, when it was amended to the Trails of Brownland Farms, that also included a fire station and sports field transfer. So property from the developer at that time was donated to the city. It's about 10 acres for those two sites. And then those deeds were subsequently recorded in that month of July of 2008. And then we jump forward to 2016, and then it became Belhaven. That's when the Planning Commission approved a final master development plan for Belhaven, formerly Trails of Brownland Farms. And then that plan, however, expired 2 years later based on your zoning code provisions. And so we were left the property was left in the position of still having that original 2006 master plan development for the property. And sort of fast forward here to 2021, the project came forward with D.R. Horton under contract to purchase the property and develop the property. And the number of units had dropped down to 611 units. And there was a planning commission workshop in September of 2021, and that workshop was deferred, looking for feedback, and additional concerns were expressed, and a lot of discussion with staff, et cetera. Then the unit count dropped down to 604 units by November of 2021. In December 14, there was another open house and workshop, but it didn't go to the full body of the Planning Commission. It was pushed off from there with some concerns about the comprehensive plan. Then we get to November of 2022, and the project was resubmitted with 513 units, and the Planning Commission moved to defer that, given some concerns about the access point. And the principal access point all along had been primary access to State Route 96. And so what D.R. Horton was proposing to do at that time, 2021, going into 2022, was to eliminate that access directly on State Route 96, have all of their access, most of the access going to Northwest Highway, and putting more cars and traffic on Northwest Highway, but also that would have led to more road work, and the developer being obligated for that road work for Northwest Highway. And in June, a year ago, June 1st, 2023, we had second reading in front of this body, and the vote failed, given the concerns over removing Highway 96 from being the primary point of access. So they reconstituted the plan, went back to the original access point, primary access on 96, two access points onto, I think it was one access point on a Northwest Highway, and then that was passed by the Planning Commission on December 12, 2023. And one of the conditions of approval from the Planning Commission was to enter into a development agreement with this body regarding a contribution for off-site improvements to Northwest Highway. And so in cooperation and collaboration with your city attorney, we prepared a development agreement. I think I was the initial scribe for that document. And it had $2.5 million in there. Mr. Dowdle is here and can explain, the negotiations that were accomplished with staff and how they arrived at that number. And so that was 3 weeks ago, the prior meeting, and this matter was deferred. And so in the interest of goodwill and cooperation, and frankly, kind of putting a nail in the coffin of discussing Belhaven, my client, D.R. Horton, agreed to increase their contribution by 10%. And so that's what we have in front of you. And the reference, there may have been a little bit of confusion in, I was out of town, Mr. Patrick and I were trying to communicate about slight adjustments to the development agreement. And so it states now $2,750,000 or the actual amount of the project if less. I don't know that that makes sense myself now that I see this in print, because I don't think any of us expect that project, the roadway project, to be less than, certainly less than that amount. I mean, I'm hearing projections of 5.5 million, 8 million, whatever. So we wouldn't have a problem at all striking that statement after the financial contribution there, just striking or the actual amount of the project if less, because we don't expect it to be less. So my client's comfortable with that figure, not trying to lower that figure, certainly don't want to increase that figure. That figure is more than what the traffic impact study assigns to this Belhaven site as physical impact and physical changes in terms of traffic load, traffic generation onto Northwest Highway. So these monies, coupled with the city's funds, is going to produce one heck of a 3-lane roadway there on Northwest Highway. And frankly, we're anxious to get moving on it and get going on it. And the sooner D.R. Horton can get going, I think the sooner the city can get going, and that highway can get improved as everybody wants it to be. So that's just my quick summary. I would just for the record, I've got copies of the Belhaven project timeline to the extent anybody wants to refer to them, but I would like to just submit these for the record here this evening, if I may. Thank you, Ethan. And then finally, earlier today, Mr. Dowdle sent over to Mr. Greer the rationale or the way the formula was arrived at, the way the calculation was arrived at in the funds that we're talking about. And this is just a 2-page letter, front and back, and would like to hand this out to you all as well. Got more copies than you probably need, but would like to hand this to you as well. With that, I'll stand down. Mr. Greer, if I would, for the record, this is Mr. Dowdle's letter today that lays out the the negotiations that were underway with the staff and how we arrived at where we are today. So sorry to speak so long. Happy to answer any questions. Mr. Dowdle is really the point guy that you may want to hear from. If not, we're happy to have this voted on and move forward. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Mr. Dow. I believe at the last meeting, there was a young lady that was here that may have done the traffic study.
Correct.
What firm was she with?
She's with Reagan Smith.
And they were employed by y'all?
Yes, they're employed by us to work on the master plan development and the traffic impact study.
With inside that traffic study, was any part of Elrod Road part of that traffic study?
It was analyzed for connection and if any improvement needed to be made to it. And I think the improvement that, it was determined that no improvements were needed as far as turn lanes or anything like that on Elrod Road.
I mean, Keith, do you have the slide that shows Elrod connecting to Northwest Highway and the development access to Elrod? We had it at the last meeting. It was a real nice one that showed both sides of, it showed Elrod going through, connecting to Northwest, and both sides of the development.
That slide that's on the screen right now shows Elrod Road connecting.
This slide I'm referring to, well, that does show it, but this slide I'm referring to, it was like a blow-up of Elrod and the connection to both sides of the subdivision and the connection to Northwest Highway. So is there a way to enlarge that plan that you had on the screen? Just not, yes, that one. Is there a way to enlarge the area that shows that right there?
Do you have anyone here from Reagan
Sorry,
Smith tonight?
I'm pointing it, y'all can't see it.
Yes, Matt, sorry.
Sorry.
Yes, Matt Hamilton is here from Reagan Smith. Tiffany, who worked on the traffic study, unfortunately had a prior engagement. She couldn't make it.
Keith, if you can utilize Click Share, I have it on my computer for.
Can he answer
Available
for
to share.
her?
Okay, that's good. So as we can see.
He will do his
Northwest,
best.
Elrod is here. Uh-oh. I just want to give a point of reference before Commissioner Johnson continues. If that's okay.
Ma'am. So the traffic study determined that there's no impact to Elrod Road that would need improvements.
I believe that's correct.
Do you know how long a road Elrod Road is?
I don't know that linear footage off the top of my head, no, sir. It's from Northwest Highway to, right, tees into that intersection there. Anderson Road, I believe.
What would you say the length of that road is, Ethan?
The section closest to this development, because Elrod goes from Northwest Highway all the way to Crowcut as an intersection.
Just in between where it intersects with
Anderson to
Anderson and
Northwest.
Northwest. And the reason I'm wanting clarification here is I believe the lady said that there was going to be a 17% increase from this subdivision, is all it would be, 17%.
Yes, the 17% is the increase of traffic on Northwest Highway due to the Bellhaven development.
So why would Northwest need all these improvements and Elrod need none if there's two entrances and exits onto Elrod Road from the said subdivision?
Because the way the traffic is distributed, majority of the traffic is not going to head out to Elrod. It's going to be heading out to Northwest, out to 96, or out through the neighborhood to 96. there's not as near as many vehicle trips that are going to take Elrod Road. There'll be some, but it'll be fairly minimal.
Commissioner, to answer your question, it is 0.36 of a mile.
Okay. Percentages.
Yeah, so looking at the, this is figure 5 from the traffic impact study that was submitted with the development plan and approved by Planning Commission. The northbound road out of that southern pod right there, where the pointer is, that's coming to Elrod, it is showing that we would have 1% of our overall traffic turning right onto Elrod, where the remainder is going to go straight through. And then if you look at that second entrance over off of Dice Lampley, again, it is, like the intersection configuration is also 1% of the traffic turning left on the Dice Lampley because there's so few homes over there. It's projected that overall 9% of the traffic would cut straight through, 9% of the overall development would cut straight through and out to 96, or would be part of the percentage that cuts through and over to Northwest Highway.
Have you driven this? Not, obviously, the development's not there yet, but those roads?
Yes.
Okay, so if you've driven those, the majority of everything that goes on in Fairview is on this side of town where Crow Cut and Northwest are. The entrance that's on 96, you've got the interstate. I mean, I hear what the traffic study that was done says, but out on 96, people aren't going to, I'm just saying, they're not going to go all the way around town to the schools, to the shopping, to where they eat. That's all on the Northwest and Elrod side of the development.
Okay. I can just tell you what the traffic study says.
I
and how it
understand
was
that.
It was reviewed by
And
staff.
that's the very
and approved.
reason why,
So that's the rationale for the percentage basis today.
On paper, and somebody that doesn't know what goes on here, I could see how they could reach the conclusion that's before us. But I think with another company doing one and with the correct, if they're given all the facts, nobody in that subdivision, I shouldn't say nobody, very few people are going to go to Highway 96 to go through a school zone to fight to get to their school. They're going to go the back road, they're going to go straight through it, and they're going to go Dice Lampley, and they're going to hit Cox Pike, go across that, and they're going to get Crow Cut, and they're going to come out at the schools. So none of them are going to utilize the way the traffic study's saying. It's just not going to happen. They already do it now. The people that live over there don't go Highway 96. I can tell you teachers that live over there. I can tell you a county commissioner that goes to school every day that does not go the way your traffic study says. He goes the way we're telling you they're going to go.
because our three major school, we have one school on 96, but we have our high school, our middle school, our elementary school.
100.
They're all on that side of town. Our Walmart, our places to eat, everything's on the side of town that would warrant them to go Elrod to Northwest or either straight out Northwest. And that's just us knowing this community.
Okay. I understand. I can just tell you what documentation I have in front of me that came before the Planning Commission and for approval, and that's how we came up with our impact amount.
Mayor, I'd like to make an amendment to the motion, if you'll allow. like to amend the motion for the city to have a traffic study done, and whatever the timetable that our attorney tells us that we have available to us to get that done, and then we can compare, reconvene, and move forward at that time. And just like he had stated before, it's possible it could come back the same way, but I don't see that as a possibility. The taxpayer, I feel that the taxpayers deserve the best. This is the largest subdivision in the history of the city, and the taxpayers deserve for us to get it right.
Let me just say something. We certainly understand, your concerns at the legislative body, but this is a PUD. This is a plan unit development, POD, and the time to vet further, because the traffic impact study was fully vetted by the Planning Commission staff, the time to have challenged the correctness, incorrectness, the assumptions, all of that was at the stage with the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission approved it. Certainly, the city can undertake its own traffic impact study. You all can do that. My client's ready to move forward with the project, and frankly, they'd rather build their portion of Northwest Highway and get going than have to wait around rather than wait around for a traffic impact study that may or may not differ by much. Might it suggest that there's going to be more than 9%? Maybe it's 10%. I mean, we don't know. It's not going to be much because there's not many people living there on Elrod and Lampley. So we're just hoping that we could advance this. This is your decision here tonight is within the narrow confines of an administrative review. I sort of compare it to an appeals board's not really an accurate way, but the case law is very clear that when a PUD comes before the legislative body is acting in an administrative role, and you're looking at the criteria and the evidence in front of you. I understand you want more evidence, and you can certainly do that, but I'm not sure what the full impact is here, on the client, because we're really anxious to move it forward. So
I do understand you being anxious, but in speaking of the Planning Commission, the difference between the Planning Commission and this board, we answer to the taxpayers. They are just appointed to a position.
Commissioner Johnson, let me address that. At the last meeting, you brought up a traffic study, and I suggested it because you were getting ready to act in an arbitrary and capricious manner, and the city would most definitely end up losing that lawsuit. And so I can tell you legally...
Depends on who our attorney was.
Legally, I'm not going to answer that. That's rude. Legally, Mr. Henry is right about the law. That is absolutely the law. I sent you an attorney-client memo dated May 23rd, 2024, and they made it very clear what the law is and what my legal opinion is. I'm not going to say any more than that, but I think you are proceeding in a way that will hurt the taxpayers of Fairview.
Well, I can assure you it's not going to hurt the taxpayers, especially if their attorney is saying the city has the right to have a traffic study, that we get it right.
No, what he said is you have a right to get a traffic study, but you also have a duty to vote on this contribution tonight. I think you've misinterpreted what he said, and I'll let the gentleman clarify what he said. But sure, the city can get a traffic study. They've offered $2.75 million to contribute to the Northwest Highway. If the city wants to get a traffic study and they approve this tonight and it shows something different on Elrod, the city can spend money on Elrod. But the contribution tonight, what they're offering is $2.75 million for Northwest Highway. And the question is, does the city want to accept that or not?
In my opinion, I would say not tonight, because the traffic study doesn't take into consideration Elrod Road, and their subdivision dumps out on Elrod Road.
What the traffic study says is that the effect on Northwest Highway is about 1.4 to 1.7 million. and what they've offered is 2.75 million. And I've made it very clear in the memo that I sent you, that I referenced, what I think this body needs to do. Griggs and Maloney and you haven't heard from Mr. Will, but he's made it very clear what he believes the law is, and he's been involved in these types of projects many, many times. Our planner has made his opinion very clear. So if the board or you proceed in this direction, you'll be doing it against all of staff who have done this type of deal many, many times.
Like the way our country was founded. We are responsible to the people, and I'm going to keep that as long as I sit up here, and I'm in my 18th year, and I'm not going to back down off of that. So if it gets voted down and I'm hung out to dry by myself, I did what I thought was right for the citizens of Fairview, and that's where I stand. It's that simple. I think we need a traffic study. I think the people deserve a traffic study.
And make it clear, I'm not saying for you not to get a traffic study, but I think it is the wrong action to make the traffic study contingent on what you do tonight.
Well, I'm just going to say this. I was told that they had a meeting with the city initially, and they offered $5 million. And I heard that the mayor was in that meeting. So where's the $5 million that they offered? Can you clarify that?
I can. Actually, that was their first proposal, and it came before this body, and you voted to change the entire project, made a motion that it empty out on Elrod and not Northwest Highway, and changed the entrances. And the way the property is constructed, the way the project is now, it requires a lot more expenditure to do the project because they have to build a bridge. So it was actually your action and the motion that was passed that resulted in the reduced contribution. That's how we ended up at 2.57
A
million.
bridge on Elrod?
Bridge on 96. The bridge on 96.
Mr. Greer can speak to that, or Will can.
But,
I thought that was a staff recommendation.
okay, hold on. This project initially started with a bridge on 96. And at that point, I was, I've been involved in this for 3.5 years. I was vice mayor at the time. And I was told that the impact to the Northwest Highway would be about $5 million, and it would go from 96 to Belvoir. So I'm not sure where that changed, but the prior staff in our codes department, they're the ones who gave the direction, and I venture to say it wasn't a board vote that they gave you a direction to change 96 and not have access on it and just on Northwest Highway. Go ahead.
Sure. So with that prior staff, we were first brought into the conversation about providing a contribution. And with that, prior staff asked if we eliminated this connection on Highway 96, when we dumped essentially about 75% of our traffic on the Northwest Highway, it's a much larger number as far as that amount of traffic, because there's no other north-south route, so it would go onto this new Northwest Highway. So that's where a larger contribution would have come from. Now, we never, that I recall, formally agreed to any number because nothing had been finalized yet as far as cost structure.
There was never a formal agreement to the $5 million, but
Right.
that was discussed with Jason Easter at the beginning of this process in 21.
Okay, if Jay Easter was involved, he was our consultant with Ray
Well, and
Smith,
it was here it was here public. It wasn't like, in an office somewhere. It
Sure.
was actually in a meeting
Sure.
that it was discussed.
There may have been some discussion about a number, but nothing had been analyzed and agreed to.
And just,
But if all of our traffic had been placed on the Northwest Highway as 75% of our traffic, which now it's not, then I can understand where a larger contribution would be required. But the way the plan is drawn now, with our access to Highway 96, the majority of our traffic is going to be coming in and out of Highway 96 entrance.
the prior discussion and improvements were part of a new PUD submittal or a new overlay submittal. This board denied it. There was discussion tonight from the board that they would prefer to see the access point on 96 and not Northwest. So at that point, the traffic study would have been calculating all the numbers to Northwest, all of the access, all of the trips would have been onto Northwest. Now that the submittal came back to a substantial compliance to the original approved PUD, it has an access point to 96. There's improvements to 96. There's some kind of cost of what you guys are doing there. And so now the generated trips and traffic count on Northwest on a study wouldn't be as high. And I'm sure that's why the number is adjusted.
Yeah,
to the
and
layout.
if you'd like, I can explain the rationale that we went through with staff to come up with the dollar amount, if you'd like me to. It's also in that letter that we sent to Mr. Greer today.
I don't think that you need to do that. I think our attorney is correct. Y'all are offering more than the calculation shows. I agree with that 100%. I still stick with the part that the other roads that are affected, I just don't understand how a study could say they don't need any improvements when you're adding hundreds of cars to them. That's all. That's my whole point. I just think we need to get a secondary study.
Mayor. So Commissioner, maybe this suggestion, might make some sense. I hope it does. So what we have here on your agenda tonight is 10% more than what D.R. Horton had previously agreed to. That's $250,000. The city can take that $250,000 extra dollars that my client's going to pay for that traffic impact study and pay for any improvements that traffic impact study should suggest need to be made at Elrod. This particular, the area we're talking about here, this Elrod, these intersections and that particular part of the development, those are in the later phases of the project. We're talking phase 4, phase 5. We're years away from anybody driving out of the subdivision from a home or into a home by way of that street. So there's plenty of time for the funds, these extra funds, to be used by the city in a smart way to address what as you as a representative believe that the citizens are concerned about. All we're saying is, it's sort of like a bird in hand. We're putting the bird in your hand, and we think that'd be a good use of those extra funds. That's all I suggest. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Henry, would you agree to the 1, 2, 3, 4, the fourth whereas, which references the money being used for the city's Northwest Highway project? Would you agree to broaden that to include, to say that the city could use it either at the city's discretion for the city Northwest Highway project and/or any improvements that the city believes are necessary to Elrod?
Yes, and I'd like to work with you on that language because I think you may want to tie it to the traffic impact study. Whatever those funds, the city's traffic impact study, we can work on that language, but the answer is yes.
Tom, how much is it going to cost for the Northwest Highway improvement that is our part? I've heard numbers, $9 million, close to $9 million.
I believe so. I believe Will Owen would be more qualified to give you that, but I believe you're correct. That is what I've heard.
We have it on paper, but I just want it for the record. Go ahead.
Mayor, the graphic that was up there previously with the aerial behind it and the color-coded sections 1, 2, and 3, the totality of those three sections is $8.6 million and some change.
Mayor, I think Commissioner Hall wanted to speak, but I have another question after him. I just don't want to hog the microphone.
Commissioner Hall?
Thank you. It seemed like the two attorneys was headed in the direction that I was headed. I was willing to accept the 2.75 tonight, but with a traffic study on Elrod Road, if there was any improvements that needed to be done there, such as paving, turning lanes, etc., if the traffic study showed that, then y'all would come back and take care of that traffic study that we would have done ourselves.
Is that that's the portion between our intersection with Elrod and Northwest Highway?
It'd be from Northwest to Anderson Road, about a
It
third of a mile.
divides, it divides the Bellhaven development in half. The Elrod Road divides it in half and continues to access Northwest Highway, which also is a part of Northwest Highway that the city's responsible for improving. See, this is where I have an issue is in the beginning when this first started, we had a different staff, but I was on the board and Vice Mayor Butler was on the board. The talk was that Bellhaven was going to come in and do the improvements from 96 to Belvoir. And then Mr. Cavender was going to do the improvements from Belvoir through his subdivision to a point where the city would take over. And now we are down to we have narrowed the scope for Bellhaven just to where the houses touch Northwest and nothing else.
Yeah, I think they're showing our entire property frontage, correct?
Well, where your property fronts Northwest is a very small portion of the entire project.
It's approximately 42%, I believe, isn't it? Is that correct, Will?
Because the Belvoir project, the improvements for their 50 houses is coming to us at $3 million approximately. Your 493 houses, you're asking us to accept $2,750,000. So the math just doesn't make sense to me, and the impact on Elrod Northwest Highway doesn't make sense to me. I'm not a traffic engineer, but
Neither am I.
okay. But I can see 493 homes versus 50 homes, and
He's contributing more for 50 homes. Wow.
I'm not aware of any financial contribution, monetary contribution from Belvoir.
they're building the entire road that connects Northwest Highway from Bellhaven out to where we're taking over.
But there's not an agreement like this, correct?
Not yet. They're not that far in the process.
Right, but the 3 million figure is what I believe, I don't know where that number came from. We weren't involved in that.
Like I said, it's been figured, but we're not that far in the process yet.
Right.
Are they required to build that?
I can't speak to what prior staff required or what those approvals required. I do know that, I believe, Ethan, there will be new lots off of that realignment. Is that correct? Okay, so okay. It's platted as a proposed right-of-way that'll be going through a section of Belvoir that will have new lots tied to this new section of Northwest Highway, the realignment.
The difference is that he's building the road so he can build lots off of it.
The lots are not being built off of the road.
I think that's what Mr. Greer just
That's
said.
not happening. Have you seen the plan?
I believe.
I'm sorry. I mean, I've been in many meetings with all of this, so.
The lots will
And we're not here to discuss that tonight. It's just a comparison and
Is it a
responsibility.
boulevard through the subdivision and one road turns off into a subdivision that goes on little feeder roads? Or does every lot come off this road that's in question?
Your first scenario is the correct scenario.
Okay,
The
so
lots
there's-
do not front.
The lots
the
do
road.
not come off this thoroughfare road. So they're going to build it for us for that's mighty nice of them. Mr. Henry, to piggyback off of what Commissioner Hall said, and you working with our attorney on the verbiage, is y'all's position that if this traffic study comes back and it says improvements need to be made, are you willing to go over and above the 250 that you're doing tonight?
No, sir, no,
So if it comes back and says we need $4 million to do this, you're going to hang the city and the citizens with it?
So let me answer that. There's a Supreme Court case that I sent all of you. It's the most recent Supreme Court case on takings and exactions. And so using Mr. Hall's scenario, if the city wanted to approve this at the 17%, which I believe the number would be 1.8, then I imagine Mr. Henry would probably say, well, if you approve this at 1.8, then we'll pay for the traffic study, and then we'll also pay for improvements to Elrod. He would probably consider that. But since he's $1.25 million over the actual impact of Northwest Highway, I think what he's saying is we're going to contribute this amount, and you can use it for Northwest Highway. Now, if the city wants to, instructs me to engage in a different type of agreement with him, where they just pay for their contribution on Northwest Highway, given the traffic study, and then another traffic study is done on Elrod, then that may be someplace to talk about. But I think just arbitrarily saying that we're going to take your $2.75 million tonight, and then we want to do another traffic study and do your impact on Elrod, and then take that in addition, that is the very definition of what that Supreme Court case says is improper and illegal.
Well, with that being said, then I think what this board needs to do is to put this on hold, have the traffic study done, and then us all work together on an exact figure, not an inflated figure, not taking extra money from them, not requiring extra money from them, and we just get it done as fast as possible and move forward. But right now, I just don't see how we could support something that we don't know the answer to.
Mayor, if I may?
Yes.
I'll try my best to put my thoughts out there. I just want to start off with, I completely respect everybody's opinion on this board. I could feel like I could make an argument for the arguments that are trying to be made. My perspective is this. I think this is the third time I feel like the whole bird in the hand is two in the bush scenario, where we have had an opportunity to commit outside dollars to a project that is going to benefit Fairview. And I understand that we can, again, I understand the arguments to be made that, yes, Elrod Road is probably going to have a higher impact than what they suggest. All of it probably will be. However, a traffic study, I'm not convinced that it's off by the percentage that's going to be large enough to offset the additional $1 million that they're throwing into the pool. I think there's a really, really good chance that if they were to commit to being patient for us to finish a traffic study on our own, and this is just my opinion, I may be off, but I'm surprised they're not open to it, because I feel like it would save them money. I think back at the end of it, we would show that the impact was closer to what their traffic, because traffic studies, it's not an individual's opinion on what they want to say, it's they're licensed individuals that have to follow a certain guideline to get to the results. I mean, it's not like another engineer could come in and find a 45% discrepancy. That seems off to me, almost an impossibility. I think maybe a 10%, 15% maybe on the high end, but then you're looking at the adjustment to what the dollar amount currently is. If they said, okay, we'll meet the increased 15% over what our traffic study shows and match that based on the dollar amount of the overall project, and it would probably be 2.1, 2.2. And then we're losing money. So at this point, I think there's again, to Commissioner Johnson's point, Elrod Road needs attention. If we can work some language into this that says, like, they just gave us an extra $250,000. Let's put $250,000 into Elrod and then leave the rest of it, the original 2.5 for Northwest. In a perfect world, yeah, I would love to sit here and get more out of it. I just think at this point in time, where we're at in the process of this entire thing, how many times we've kind of gone swaying on our decisions or going back and forth or changing the plan and this, that, and the other, I personally feel, I'm surprised that we're having this conversation, if I'm being completely frank. But in my opinion, I think the city should take this offer.
Mayor?
Yes.
Mr. Greer, Mr. Owen, one of the conditions of approval at the Planning Commission was a phased traffic study. Is that still the intent, or is this trying to supersede that and take care of it all right now?
No, I think that condition would still exist, that with each successive phase of the development, I believe the Planning Commission put a contingency that their traffic study would be reevaluated at that time based on what the actual patterns were from the phases that had been completed.
So this could be something that comes up after they build phase one. When phase two is submitted to the planning commission, it would have to include some sort of traffic study, studying the new patterns and phases.
An updated traffic study, correct.
So how will that work? If we find out that what I suspect is true, that most of the, Northwest Highway is going to have a bigger impact than this traffic study shows, and we can, I don't know what the things are called that you put across the road to count the cars, are we going to adjust the figure up? Because $8 million down to, and I'm talking about $8 million across the whole thing. I just don't see where we're thinking that 2.7 million is a big deal. That out of the whole project, I mean, that's, so I feel like, are we going to be able to do this traffic study at the end of the project and figure out some type of, I don't know, you explain to me.
Yeah, I think the mechanism in which that would come to fruition would be if a revised study, and I don't know, I don't have any of the phases in front of me. But let's say phase 5, when it was submitted to the Planning Commission for review, it came back, the revised traffic study came back saying that turn lanes were warranted. We'll just use Elrod Road, for example. Then what staff and what Planning Commission would anticipate would be that those turn lane improvements would be incorporated into the construction plans for that phase.
It wouldn't change the contribution amount?
Correct.
Which is why I suggested if we could broaden the scope of the project to include improvements in Elrod Road, then the city could use the 2.75 million for Northwest Highway and any improvements that the city determines are necessary in Elrod Road. And that was the suggestion, I think, that Mr. Henry said his client would be open to.
May I speak
Yes.
for a second? And I believe, Ethan will correct me if I'm wrong, the amendment for the contribution and the traffic study was to count the traffic at the intersection for the signal at Highway 96 and Northwest Highway. Is that not correct?
We'll have to look back and see if that's what it was.
I believe that's correct.
So, Mayor, I hear exactly what Patrick just said, and I don't disagree with that. But based on what Will just said, is if it calls for the turning lanes to be put in, who has to do it, the city or the developer?
At that point, we would ask the developer to include it in their construction plans and at their cost.
Mr. Henry, would you speak to that? Just so it's on the record.
I'm not sure what I'm to speak to. What's the question?
Evidently, the Planning Commission put something in the wording that each phase, you have to present a new traffic study. With those traffic studies, if it calls for turning lanes 10 years from now, is D.R. Horton willing to put the turning lanes in?
Well, the way this Northwest Highway Development Agreement reads is that the developer's contribution today would satisfy the two conditions added by the Planning Commission relative to those items on pages 13 and 14. Our understanding was that those TIS updates were to determine whether or not a traffic light is now triggered at the intersection of Northwest Highway and State Route 96. So the way this is structured, the premise of this development agreement is, city, you don't have to worry about when it gets triggered or not, phase 1, 2, 3, 4, phase 6. You don't have to worry about additional funds to finish the project that you all want to do. We're going to pay you the money. It's your money. You do the project. These funds include the cost of that intersection, that traffic light, And what we're suggesting here tonight, which I think makes good sense, we've increased the contribution by 10%. Those $250,000 could be used by the city however you want for public roadway improvements. And if you want to tie it to LROD, that's fine. Maybe it won't be LROD, maybe it'll be something else. So I think, that's why I think maybe we tie it to the things that are studied in the traffic impact study and that the city's going to undertake. So that traffic impact study that the city undertakes may say, we don't have a problem at LROD, we got a problem over here that we recommend improving. Those funds could be used to make those improvements. That's what we're offering.
So it is your understanding, based on the document that you're ready for us to vote on, you pay tonight and you're done, never again?
Well, not tonight. I mean, there's
Well,
triggers for when the payment occurs, et cetera. And the city's got to kick
But
off its
this-
roadway
it-
project.
If it comes forward in these different phases and it says, this turning lane needs to be done, this needs to be done, y'all are out, y'all are done. It's on the taxpayer's hook. I just want to know if that's the way you read the contract.
I'd have to go back and look at those conditions of the planning commission from.
That's how I read, so that's how I read it. I read it as they're buying out
Both
their.
of them are saying yes.
They're buying out their entire obligation by offering 2.75 million. And that's the contribution to Northwest Highway. In the discussion tonight is there was concern about LROD. And so what I think Mr. Henry, and he can tell me if I was wrong, but what he is suggesting is that they'll still contribute 2.75, but they will agree to broaden the definition of the work to include any other road improvements the city believes are necessary, and the city could use the additional $250,000 for those improvements to LROD, or likely LROD, I guess, from what you were saying, Commissioner Johnson. I think that's where we are.
That's correct. I'll reiterate, Mr.
So-
Carter said it better than I did.
So future phases that the impact study would be done on, like you were speaking to, Will, don't matter. Because it doesn't matter if it says, oh, yes, y'all were right, all the cars are going out Northwest Highway, but we've already accepted the 2.7, so that's a done deal. We can't expect, even if the traffic study shows what I believe to be true, it doesn't matter because we've accepted the money.
But that's that was the financial decision I think the developer made to go from 1.4 to 1.7 to 2.5 to essentially buy out that obligation ahead of time.
And
Problem
so-
is, I don't believe the two, just because of what we've already gone through to see what the whole entire project's going to cost, I find it hard to believe the 2.7 is even going to cover the impact. But that's my.
Mayor, if I could, I want to go back to something Mr. Henry said earlier. We may be looking at 8 to 10 years down the road before you get to that intersection that's in question.
Elrod?
So this document here, the one that's on the screen now, let's just say section 3 is 0.27 miles. Ethan, did you say Elrod Road was like 0.3 something earlier?
0.36.
0.36. So this 0.27, the projected cost is 2.8 million just for 0.27 miles. Elrod is 0.36, is that what you just said? 0.36, so we know that just on today's figures, it's going to be well over 3 million that the city would have to fund there. Now, who thinks it's going to be cheaper 10 years from now?
Well, I'll point out that the proposed road section for Northwest Highway is a 3-lane section with curb and gutter with a wide sidewalk system along it, possible utility relocation as well. I would not think that the limited traffic that we would put onto Elrod Road would necessitate a 3-lane section with curb and gutter. If anything, it's maybe upgrade of paving or anything like that, but I can't see that it would be close to that kind of a number.
We're looking at about 1,000 cars, and that's conservative. You're 483 homes at 2 cars per home traveling back and forth. I mean, it's the biggest impact of any development that we have in Fairview.
Look, I get it. This is a business for y'all. This is a great business decision for y'all to say, hey, we're going to dangle some money in front of you and hope y'all take it. Because if we have to do this 10 years from now, it's really going to cost us more. If we get them to take it now, they're hung with it. And I get it. I totally get it from a business standpoint. I would probably be doing the same thing. But me, those people sitting out there, lots of them live here. It's their money. We're responsible to them. And I just don't see, even with what Commissioner McDonald said, these traffic studies may come in 10 years from now and say something totally different, but they're going to say, oh, well, y'all are hung with that because y'all took some money from them on the front end to let them out. And I just don't think that's being good stewards of what we're up here for. I think anybody that voted for that would just be scrutinized by the people, be like, well, I don't think they made the right decision. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. I just don't see how tonight we could move forward with that without the traffic study. I think we need to come together with y'all, work together, have an independent traffic study done, have that person, when it's completed, meet with y'all's person and figure out where we are. And if y'all are right, I'll tell you I'm sorry, every one of you. I'll come up and shake your hand on television. But I just don't see that this is the right decision tonight for the future of Fairview.
One thing we discussed in our meetings with staff was that to look at it from, if we were, the initial impact was based on the traffic counts, and those dollar amounts were much, much lower based on total traffic counts. And that's just with developments that are approved today and traffic today. So what we looked at as the second option, is how we came up with a larger number, was we looked at the frontage of our property. I can't remember if it was Will or Ethan mentioned that a lot of times with developments, if there's a new road project, that the developer would improve their section of the road. So we decided, well, let's look at that to see where that number shakes out. So we looked at the total percentage of the road just on a frontage basis. And that's where we came up with the 2.3, and then we added another 1.7, and we added the extra 175,000. So our impact today, even if the traffic study may be off, is much, much lower than the 2.75.
So you've got 493 homes, and you've got 20. I'm just giving an example. You got 493 homes, and you've got 20 that touch Northwest Highway, and you're saying that's all your responsibility is what touches the road?
No, I think maybe Will understands what I'm getting at. It's a road frontage calculation just on the property. And so if we only had 300 feet of road frontage instead of 1,700, of course that would not make sense at all. So we looked at how much property do we have that touches Northwest Highway, and it's 42% of that from Highway 96 to the end of the road project. So then we looked at those construction costs to say, well, what if we built that portion of the road? We just went ahead and built it using the city's estimate. And that's where we came up with the 2.3 million. Then we added on an extra 170,000 for the signal at Highway 96, and then we added the extra 10% that we were asked to. So that's where the 2.75 comes from. It's not that we're, when we looked at just the 17% traffic, or if we took out, I don't know if you had a chance to read the letter, at the Planning Commission meeting, there was discussion about not sure that the Fairview Town, how much of that Fairview Town Center traffic will actually come through. So we took actually all that traffic out, and it bumped our numbers up to 21%. And so when we got to 21%, we were at $1.7 million of our traffic onto Northwest Highway. So we took that estimate, and that's, we thought 1.7 doesn't seem right. Let's look at it this other way, as if we were going to build it and contribute it that way, and then the city could use it in the manner they felt needed, or we could even build that section of road as part of our obligation. But we felt the contribution might be better, then the project could be built continuously and simultaneously.
Because we have three developments on Northwest Highway that total, what, about 150 lots that are proposed and approved. It's about 150 lots, because there's about 50 lots in each. Thereabouts. So we've got about 150 lots on these three developments, and then we've got, farms that have one house, one house, one house. Then we've got your development of 493 lots. So who has the most impact? 0.17, I just don't see it.
Well, there's also all the existing traffic as well. So we do have impact on the road, but that's for, the impact that we're putting onto it. It's not, we contribute this, we're not the only contributor to the road to date, as you could say.
But you are going to contribute about 1,000 cars.
800, and according to the studies, 800 something, yeah.
Okay, 800 and something cars.
32, I think.
832 cars.
I have a question for Will.
832, according to the traffic impact study.
Okay. Mr. Hall.
Yes.
Commissioner Hall.
Will, do y'all ever do traffic studies at each phase?
Do we ever require them? That would be an atypical scenario. So no, that's not it's usually not a typical contingency that I see.
Just a thought.
The only way we're going to know reality, I mean, I've lived here 30 years. I know some of these have lived here more than that, and we know. We know where, where the cars go. We know where everything's located, and we know that people aren't going to go all the way from 96 around town to, the schools and the restaurants and Walmart and all that. Okay. So I'm just having if we were able to do a real time where this phase is built and this part is built, and I know that the city wants to, we've got a plan for Northwest Highway, but it's just hard to know what the material cost and the construction costs are going to be years from now, and taking, if, right now we're considering almost $9 million for this project, which the impact of 483 homes is a lot.
832 cars worth.
832 cars. I mean, putting that on our citizens is just hard for me to wrap my head around.
You want me to put something in perspective for you real quick? 832 cars at an average of 20 feet long is 16,640 feet nose to tail. Divided by 5,280 feet in a mile is 3.15 miles of the cars nose to tail just in your subdivision on the current traffic study. How long's that road section right there?
Entire road section?
Maybe 1 mile?
0.79 miles, I believe.
Oh,
I believe that's right.
3.15 miles worth of cars in your subdivision.
Okay.
17%. You see why we think the traffic study may be skewed?
I can maybe understand
And I will
your
say
position,
this,
but
I think that maybe the city has gotten this wrong all along. Maybe we should have been doing traffic studies at the same time we require developers to. And I'm going to put that on a future agenda for us to consider that, because we've got to get these things right. Spring Hill is a nightmare to drive in, and we don't need to be like that.
one thing I'll point out too is that, we are adding traffic to the road, but this is a kind of the amount of traffic we add to the road doesn't necessarily justify a 3-lane section with curb and gutter. I think that is kind of from what I understand, that's kind of the city's, what do you call it? It's your thoroughfare. Yeah, so it's maybe not our traffic impact. So our impact on it because it's a large, if we were just to cover the impact of the existing road, we wouldn't be building a 3-lane wide road with curb and gutter.
Well, let me just say, I drive our roads every day, and there's several sections of our road that don't have turn lanes. And I sit there for 10 to 15 minutes sometimes trying to get out onto the road with 832 car impact on this road. It definitely needs 3 lanes. And that's what we're hoping for throughout our whole community. Well, our highways. And this is Northwest, it's a highway. Well, you know what I'm saying, the impact on it.
Mayor, can I speak to the
Yes.
17%? So just to clarify, the 17% number is if you take all of the projected 2029 traffic, including Bellhaven and all the other developments, and the background growth of just, if there were no developments in the area, just the population growth in general. The 2029 total traffic on Northwest Highway, Bellhaven would be the impact, Bellhaven's impact to that 2029 total traffic number is 17%. They would contribute 17% of that total traffic on Northwest Highway in 2029. So that's what the 17% number comes from. I don't know if that changes anything for anybody, but that's how that number was arrived to. Currently, and just looking at the traffic study real quickly, it appears they've roughly broken up approximately 55% of the traffic to the total development. They're anticipating coming from Highway 96, and 45% would be coming off of Northwest Highway. So it's not a drastic discrepancy. From your experiences locally, what percentage would you anticipate would be in line with what you see?
Like percentages going out 96 access versus Northwest to Crow Cut and
Right.
70-30 Crow Cut Northwest.
Okay.
And that's just because I'm out here every day. I see what goes on. I mean, I think the board members would, I'm not saying they'd agree with me, but I know that they know that more of the impact is going to go towards the schools, the shopping, and the restaurants. And that just isn't out. You know, if I'm going 96, I'm going to the interstate. I am not going to travel all the way around our community to get back on this side. I'm going to take Northwest to Crow Cut, and here I am at Walmart, schools, and restaurants.
So at a 70%, like I said, they had shown 45%. If you doubled their numbers.
Back to 5 million and them covering 96 to Belvoir.
No, if you doubled the traffic numbers, the level of service of the intersections, and I'm just trying to anticipate if another traffic study was done that represented 70% of the traffic utilizing Northwest Highway, then it would be less than double. But if, in this case, let's just double it, then the level of service of the intersections on Northwest Highway would still be a B. Industry standard, anything below a D would require improvements. So I'm anticipating, even if you doubled if you changed their distribution to where it doubled what was on Northwest Highway and halved what they've projected on State Route 96, the level of service of intersections I anticipate would still operate at a level of service of B. So just as a food for thought.
What is the current level, Mr. Owen?
Current level, as shown, is A. So A, real quick traffic lesson, level of service of A at intersections And the level service is all based on the delay time. How long does it take a car to make a maneuver in the peak hour of traffic? And A is 0 to 10 seconds, and B is 10 to 20 seconds. And the description of a level of service of B, again, this is industry, this isn't just their description. Volume to capacity ratio is low, progression is good, and/or short cycle lengths is present, slightly more vehicles stop than for a level of service of A.
What would be the level of service with these improvements as shown when completed? And back to an A.
Say again.
What would be, if after these improvements were made, what would the level of service be? In 2029, what would that level of service be after this is completed and with that traffic?
Ironically, the improvements that are shown or that are anticipated by going from a 2-lane to a 3-lane, they don't impact, in this scenario, they don't impact intersection levels of service at all.
So we started in A, we would still be in an A when this is completed. Yep.
And one other thing to consider is the red section that you see on the north end. My understanding is that's a city project that's currently in design, I believe, or some level of preliminary design that I believe has already been committed to by the city. So in some ways, you can take that 3.6 and set it aside as being independent, since that's something the city's going to do or anticipates doing irregardless of any developments on Northwest Highway.
Anything else from the board? I don't think you got a second on yours. So the first and second on for approval is on the table. So if there's no more discussion, we can go ahead and vote.
Mayor, I just have a couple questions. Okay, Mr. Daugherty, the first question, I assume that we are financially prepared if we were to approve this agreement to absorb or consume the remainder of the project cost of the $6 million or so. And then we already have the 3, I guess, slated and prepared and scheduled.
Yes and no. I mean, if we were doing it today, probably not this second, but if we have 4 or 5 years, I believe we should be able to absorb.
Well, we have 5 years in this agreement to have it substantially completed. So that's the question I ask is, are we prepared to hop on this right away to get?
Very prepared.
Then the question about would a force majeure language in regard to that 5-year timeline, if there was unforeseen circumstances, would you be okay adding that language?
Absolutely, and I apologize for not being here at the last meeting. We could have addressed that then, but sure, force majeure is standard language, and apologize that it wasn't in there to begin with.
If we were to hit in 5 years, we were under construction on this project but not substantially complete, what do you think that looks like from your perspective? So the language says in 5 years from the time of this agreement, we have to be substantially complete. If in 5 years we're still building that road and we're not substantially complete, would you be able to obtain and recoup those funds?
And there is no force majeure excuse. I mean, opportunity to cure in those situations, and I don't think we say anything in this agreement now. Is that in there? Okay.
Yeah, the opportunity to cure, I
So-
believe, is 60 days, and that's under page 2, 3A.
Okay.
And then similar discussion to what Mr. Carter had earlier was allowing the language to include, I think right now it's kind of geared more towards construction improvements. Could that language be geared also towards engineering and design on the front end? Could we use those funds towards that?
Yeah, I think the intent of our text was to make sure that the city uses these funds for those roadway improvements that are associated with the Bellhaven development, meaning don't use these funds to go build a school, don't use these funds for something unrelated to improving the roadways that are adjacent to this property. So with Mr. Carter, happy to revise that language and make that clear.
I think 1A says the developer's contribution shall be paid within 30 days of the developer's receipt of the city's award of construction contract to a roadway. So I think the city could then use the monies to pay for anything that has to do with this construction project.
But so tomorrow, if we ordered an engineer to start design work on the estimated 150 grand, we would not be able to tap into those funds until we have a construction agreement in place. So we would have to front the front engineering costs.
I think that's true.
Okay. So is it possible to open that up to have access to those funds for design?
Mr. Henry, do you understand Commissioner Butler's question?
No, I'm sorry, I didn't hear it. I did not. I was
So
talking.
1A
Yep.
says that the city will receive the $2.75 million upon the award of the construction contract.
Right.
And so I think what Commissioner Butler is saying is before the city awards the contract, the city will incur certain costs. And I think he's wanting to know if the developer would be willing to forward that timeline,
Yeah.
before the construction award, but
Yeah, I'm
make it, for example, upon when the city starts to accumulate invoices related to the project, but not necessarily from the award forward, but from the time the city starts to spend money, I think is the question.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think A and B, or maybe an or, but the critical point of payment is upon approval of that first final subdivision plat for Phase 1. So we expect that Phase 1 final plat's going to be coming in here pretty quick. I don't know how quick, but, okay, so maybe we're within the next 9 months, we'll have that final plat in here. So that payment then, could be made at that time. I imagine that might be ahead of your engineering schedule, but
Yeah, Commissioner Butler, if you look at 1B, it says if a notice to proceed is not issued by the city prior to the City Planning Commission approval of developer's final plat for Phase 1, then the developer shall have the right to post a distinct surety bond for the developer's contribution in the form of a letter of credit in favor of the city for a maximum of 5 years or until the city's issuance of the notice to proceed. I think that responds to your question or concern there.
Will we have access to funds in a surety bond?
so that's the only issue. Okay. Well, so what my client would like to do would be to revise this such that the payment, full payment, would be made, not just, of course, with the subdivision plat, you're going to have a bond for infrastructure directly associated with those streets, which are internal to the development. What we're suggesting is, in addition to that, we'd go ahead and make that payment at 2.75 upon the approval of that final plat.
I'll make my best attempt at this. I make a motion to amend to include the language to allow payment in full at final plat and to allow proceeds of that to go towards design and engineering work for this project, to strike the or actual amount in that first beginning part that we discussed earlier, and the force majeure language for the time frame. And that is my motion for amendment.
I'll second.
Yes, Commissioner Hall?
Mr. Carter, if we go back to the 2.5, take out the 250, and require a traffic study for Elrod Road, and it exceeds the 250, or if it's less than the 250, will they agree to that?
Can't answer that question. I think they're here today to offer 275, and I think that's where they are, and Mr. Henry just shook his head. I don't,
Yeah, Commissioner Hall.
you can ask him directly.
Well,
I don't need to be in the
I've
middle of
been,
that.
from the very beginning, I've been concerned about Elrod Road and a traffic study on Elrod Road, and I'm not wavering from that.
Commissioner Hall, and you can either amend Mr. Butler's, Commissioner Butler's motion, or allow that vote to take place and then make a motion yourself. But what I would suggest is, if that's your concern, that you make a motion that 250,000 of the 2.75 be able to be used for any other road improvements that the city believes is necessary, which would target Elrod. But I think that's the way I would handle that.
But they're not willing, if it goes to 350, they're not willing to come up with 100,000.
The way I would respond to that is maybe we don't limit it to the 10% and the extra 250, that the entire amount, 2.75 million contribution, can be used by the city to perform a traffic impact study on Elrod, and whatever it costs, and that comes out of the 2.75. So it's up to you, leaving it up to you to do with those funds what you want to do. It's so long as there are roadway improvements tied to the project, however you want to shift the shells around to fix things that you want to address, we don't care. That's fine by us. So I would recommend that we adjust that accordingly.
See, that would be all well and good if I felt like the 2.75 million would cover just what the impact is. But I mean, Elrod aside, I just don't think that 2.75 million is gonna cover the impact that this subdivision is gonna have on our roads.
Mayor, I hear you, and I understand what you're saying, but that is not what the study shows. And in a court of law, the city will lose that argument. It doesn't mean that you don't feel that way or that may be your opinion, but the city will lose that argument, legally speaking. May not change your opinion about it, but
If the impact study was done on the rear end instead of the front end, we would get a better idea of how the impact is actually going to happen. And I can almost 100% say that it will come back to say what I'm saying, because our community knows where people drive and why they drive the roads they do. So
it doesn't change my legal opinion about that.
I understand.
Mr.
And
Carter?
I mean, I appreciate that, but
Can I ask you for another legal opinion, sir? Do you think a judge would tell the city that they couldn't have a traffic study?
No, I think the judge is going to look at the traffic study and is going to either say that the impact is between 1.4 and 1.7 million and order that, and they're going to order the city to pay their attorney's fees and the delay that this has cost. I think that's likely what's to happen.
Okay. So let's say, I don't know how long it would take for that to get to court. I have no idea. But if we could have the traffic study done and back before them in 60 days.
As Mr. Henry stated, I think the time to vet the traffic study is gone.
I understand what he said.
I think that's the law.
If that's the law, why did you tell us a meeting ago that we could have a traffic study?
Because you were prepared to make a motion to turn it down, which I thought was a mistake. And so.
All I'm going to do is defer it.
I did that to get the matter deferred so we could reconsider it, so I could send all of you a memo about what the law was, which I did. But, and that's fine. It's just an opinion. Everyone has an opinion. Mine's a legal opinion. That's my legal opinion. You don't have to agree with it.
So we deferred it for 30 days as a board in order to have time to consider if the city would do their own traffic study, because we have responsibility to our citizens, because anything that we take on as far as improvements to accommodate this 832 cars will be the responsible of our citizens. And then I find out that the deferment was just put aside, and I do understand the 250,000 was added, so we see it as a new item, but I was kind of.
The problem is the city can get a traffic study, but the city cannot. I think the city needs to vote this up or down, and if the city doesn't vote it up, then I think I've indicated what I think is likely to happen. When you look at our code, and I think Commissioner Johnson stated this earlier, there is no provision for the city of Fairview to get its own traffic study. The traffic study is what it is. Now, in other cities have amended their codes, Franklin, Spring Hill, in their new zoning codes, which, you know, and I've made my opinion very clear that I think we need to update our zoning and development codes. But other cities do their own traffic studies. They don't even allow the developer to do it. The
And
city just does it, and that's the one they use. But that's not the situation we have here. And so if we say, well, we're not gonna vote on this, we want to do our own traffic study and you're gonna use ours, that's a process that's not provided for in our code. Now, we could get one done, and that's fine. No one is saying that the city can't get their own traffic study done. But I don't think you can hold these guys up and make them abide by our traffic study versus the one they've done, because they've followed our code.
I don't disagree with that. That's why I said if there is a difference, we come together and see what we can work out. That's why I said that. Now, if it was voted down, I don't know if it would be voted down tonight, and they sued, maybe it gets in court in 2 years from now. And I was just thinking, I don't know how long it'll take for the traffic study, but if we could have it done in 60 days and us all meet again, I think that's the way to go.
Commissioner, one thing I might bring to light is typically when you do a traffic study, you got to do initial traffic counts to get the background current traffic, existing traffic counts. And typically that's desirable to be done when school is in session. So the 60 days wouldn't necessarily give time for obviously school to be back in session and for that regular flow of traffic to be evaluated on the existing patterns. So I would anticipate to be an accurate reflection that there would be, if you did choose to do a traffic study, you would want to wait until school's back in session.
So how is a traffic study, from what you just said, even realistic if the houses, do they take into consideration the 832 or cars that are going to be additionally on the road?
Yes.
So what they do is they do it when school's in session to get what it is right now, and then they add the 832 car impact?
Well, there's several steps, but yes, they take current counts at all the intersections that they evaluate. That's called the existing traffic. Then they will model their own the traffic that's generated by the development, and that's called their internal traffic. And that's based on the number of dwellings, and then they distribute how that traffic enters and exits the development based on where the lots are in relation to a particular entrance or exit to the proposed development. In addition to that, if there are known developments in the vicinity of a proposed development, they will take the generated traffic from those developments and add that to the existing and the development in question's traffic. And then they will also project a growth rate over the course, what they call it the horizon year. So if the project is anticipated to take 5 years or 10 years before it gets to all phases being built, then they will evaluate 10 years from now, what will all of those numbers look like, and incorporate a growth rate, a background growth rate that says, if this development was never built, what would the background growth rate be for the horizon year? So that way we can compare the impact that the development has in, let's say, 2030 compared to if it didn't exist or wasn't built, what would the 2030 traffic look like in comparison to if it did exist? And you compare those two numbers. And that's how you're able to evaluate the impact that it will have when it's completed. And again, there are some assumptions made. There is some professional judgment in how the distribution is generated, and we've discussed that tonight some. And so, yes, there could be another study that distributes the traffic that's generated by the development in a different manner. But as I mentioned to you, even if they doubled what was presently shown as utilizing Northwest Highway, all of the intersections would still operate at an acceptable level of service from an industry standard.
Ethan, we've talked about Elrod Road and Northwest Highway and 96. Did I see in one of the slides earlier that there is another exit that comes out on Anderson Road?
I believe that is correct.
Was Anderson Road part of the traffic study?
Yes, it was.
And they don't think any cars are going to come out that exit?
They have allocated 2% of the development's generated peak traffic that would utilize the Anderson Road entrance.
Is that 2% on top of the 17%? Or is that 2% of the 17%?
The 2% is on top of the 17% that would be utilizing Elrod Road.
Anderson.
Elrod.
Okay.
So they've modeled 17% of their traffic is anticipated to utilize Elrod Road to access their new home and their new development. No, Elrod. Yes. They've allotted an additional 2% of their internal traffic would utilize Anderson Road. They've allotted 45% of their traffic, the distribution of their traffic, people coming into and out of this development, 45% of it will use Northwest Highway. That's what the current traffic study models. 55% of it will use Highway 96.
What was the 40 figure?
45% will use Northwest Highway in some capacity to access this development.
So that's, between those two, that's 100%.
Correct.
And then you've got another 17% and
17
another 2%.
17% and the 2% are included in the 45%.
Okay.
Because they have to use,
Okay.
they have to use Northwest Highway to get to Elrod, so,
Or Elrod to get to Northwest.
or Elrod to get to Northwest, correct.
But they don't have to use Anderson. to get to either.
Correct.
They could take Anderson to Cox Pike.
There are maybe, quick count, maybe 30 to 35 lots that would have, all I can give is my personal opinion. If I lived in approximately 35 of these lots, I would probably, my closest entrance and exit from the development would be Anderson Road. So that's probably what I would take if I was driving. And I lived in one of those 25, 30 some odd lots.
Anybody have anything else?
Mayor, just my final thoughts or concerns are just, when this proposal came through as a new PUD or overlay, all the traffic generation was northwest, didn't have an access point to 96. There was never an agreement, but there was some discussion or feedback from staff that maybe they were taking the improvements from 96 to the Dice-Lampley intersection where Belvoir was going to cut across. When that plan amended, now the traffic count is amended, and now it's back in front of us, and we've lost some of those improvements or some of those dollars per se. And so I'm worried that if we kick this can down the road, we spend money on another traffic study, that the traffic study is going to come back with the same or less impact. Do we waste money on the traffic study? Do they still offer 2.75? Our professional staff is recommending that if their impact on Northwest doubled, they still wouldn't have additional requirements. It would still be a level service of B. So I'm just concerned that, do we lose dollars again by prolonging it? And that's just my thoughts.
Mayor,
Yes.
I want to make an amendment to Vice Mayor's motion.
Point of order.
Only,
We have an amendment with a second on the table, don't we?
Yeah, I think unless Mr. Butler is willing to amend his amendment to include a fourth
so
item.
he has an amendment, then it's not his motion then, right? Okay.
And I am happy to include in my amendment the language to allow for these dollars to be applied to any improvements towards this development, including Elrod.
And the second was Mr.
And I would second that.
Okay, so it's been first and seconded. Mr. Hall, does that answer
Okay,
your question?
explain what
Mr.
you're
Hall?
talking about on Elrod.
That would right now, the language only pertains to improvements as drawn or highlighted. So this would allow that if we identified that Elrod needs improvements and we wanted to apply that 250,000 or 500,000 or 10,000, we would be able to do so as long as it pertains to improvements to help this project area. Does that capture what you're thinking?
Close, but not quite.
Well, why don't you let us know? Just let us know what you're thinking.
What I've already stated a minute ago, go ahead and let them proceed with 2.5 million. Take the $250,000 and do a traffic study. And if it's less, then it costs us, if it's $100,000 less, then it costs the city $100,000, but at least we got our traffic study. If it costs $100,000 more, I think they should step up to the plate and take care of that. That's just the way I see it as far as Elrod Road goes.
So are you
Because
talking about-
Elrod Road is going to be a connector between Anderson Road and Northwest. Y'all can say what you want to, but I know it's going to be.
Commissioner Hall, what I would suggest is that we vote on the motion that's been proposed by Mr. Butler and seconded by Mr. McDonald. And depending on what happens with that, then you can make another motion to say what you've suggested. But my response to that would be the developer already said they're not willing to do that. But you're free to make a motion to that extent, and if it passes, then it passes.
So if Vice Mayor's motion fails, then I can make another motion and see if they'll accept it.
Or even if it passes, you could still make that motion. you know.
Still?
Still make that motion too, yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Because what I hear, they're not willing to consider anything past the 2.75, and that's what I'm trying to say is, I don't think that amount of money is even going to cover the initial impact, much less LROD. So, anyway.
Mayor, if I may get, Mr. Carter, if I could get your opinion on something, just for clarification. Maybe it's just me. I feel like there has been comments made tonight that seem to come from a position of authority on this matter, as if we have some authority over the applicant to say, we want more from you, and that they would somehow have to comply to that. Am I wrong to interpret it that they in fact wouldn't have to, and that they really have no reason to even be as far down the road as they currently are? Am I off on that from a legal perspective? I don't say I agree with, personally, I agree with everything that's been said tonight as far as the impact study is probably not right. I agree with that, but I don't know how we prove it. I mean, we can talk about our emotion, and I can talk about how I drive around that area all day long, and I use those back roads more than I use the regular thoroughfares. But that, I don't know how we prove it from a city's perspective that would warrant additional money above and beyond the 2.75.
So I've provided you my professional opinion under attorney-client privilege in a confidential email, which I'm entitled to do as your attorney. And none of the discussion tonight has changed my opinion about the matter. I think the other professionals on the staff have given you their opinions about the matter, which are different than how they feel or what they see in the community. They're based on the facts and their professional credentials. And so while I respect and hear how we may feel this way or feel that way, or we observe this or observe that, I think in a court of law, what we're going to be talking about are is the report itself, is the process that we've gotten here with, and the professional opinions that have been rendered by all the parties. And I don't think I'm going to say any more about that.
Thank you.
So what we have in front of us is, I mean, even with the traffic study, it's a guess. There's no reality until the development is put in. There's no way to know the impact there's just no way to know what the impact on the roads is going to be until we see what the 800 and some odd cars, how they're going to impact our roads. So traffic study opinions, all of that right now is just a guess. The reality of what's going to happen is when the development is actually there.
So I would object to the use of the word guess because there's a difference between a lay opinion and an expert opinion. And so no one is saying that people can't have lay opinions, but there's a difference between a lay opinion and an expert opinion. And it's not a guess, it's a science, actually. And I think that's probably as much as I can say about that. I disagree with how that was stated.
Mayor, do you know how we came to get extra money added from the developer? Who from the city met with them to see if they would give more money, and did the board authorize that?
It wasn't me.
I know. I called the developer and I asked if they would, I told them 2.5 million. It didn't appear that there was going to be votes for it based on our last meeting, and I asked them to consider increasing their offer. I didn't tell them what to increase it. I just asked them to consider increasing it.
Okay.
And
That's
by-
how it got put back on the agenda.
And by them increasing it, our vote to defer it for 30 days was thrown out the window, and it was asked or put on the agenda for tonight, which was 2 weeks earlier than this board voted on.
All right, Patrick, legally, if this was not even supposed to be on the agenda tonight and it's supposed to be back in 2 weeks, how are you saying that we are bound to vote on it tonight?
I think they've added $250,000. It's a different agreement. And so it was put on the agenda, and that's why we're bound to vote on it tonight. It's a different matter.
So basically, we're negotiating. So if it's a different agreement and we negotiated and y'all offered 250,000 more, then we're negotiating.
Seems reasonable.
Yeah.
I don't dispute how you've put it.
If you had the authority to ask them to increase their offer, why couldn't we do that tonight?
Absolutely.
You can, but I think that what they've said is that 2.75 is their choke point. And Mr. Henry can stand up and say that, but I think he's already said that.
Okay.
And I didn't ask for any specific number.
Right.
I suggested to him that it appears that 2.5 is not going to cut it, and you guys are going to have to do better. They notified staff they were willing to go up to 2.75 million.
And in the discussions in 21, when it was 5 million, and from their project to Highway 96, that seemed to be reasonable to me, and I never understood why it got cut in half. So that's kind of where I'm at.
That plan was
Mayor,
denied.
We moved the entrance off of Northwest Highway to 96,
That was,
which drastically changed the
That was
impact.
discussed when the entrance was
But
on
that's why the
96.
$5 million changed.
That discussion was had when I was vice mayor and the entrance was on 96.
Correct. This board denied that plan.
I understand that, but I'm saying that the discussion at the time when the entrance was on 96 was 5 million, and they would improve from their development up to 96.
I don't believe that to be true, but just for,
Well, I can tell you what I do believe is true, Mayor. I think Commissioner Hall is exactly correct in stating that he doesn't feel that $250,000 is going to do any improvements on Elrod Road. And I just don't see how, if we're not allowed to ask for any more money, per se, or they're not willing to do it anymore, I don't see how we can be held to where we just have to accept what they're offering.
Let me try to answer that. So their obligation is to pay for their impact. And the traffic study that was done and accepted by the Planning Commission said their impact was between 1.4 and 1.7 million, depending on the exact improvement. And so they have an ability to offer more than that, which is what they've done. Now, you know, if the actual impact is 1.4 to 1.7, and they're offering 2.75 to be used on Northwest Highway, I don't know if there's a real difference between spending 2.75 million on Northwest Highway or spending 1.4 on Northwest Highway and asking, and then say the impact is 1.2 on Elrod. I don't know what the difference is, but I think the offer tonight is 2.75 for the Northwest Highway. And so this board has the ability to either accept that or not. This board has the ability to ask them if they're willing to do more, and I think they've said no. And we have a first and a second with several items that Mr. Butler's made. And so I think we're probably beyond when we have a motion like that, we're supposed to keep it to the confines of the motion. And I think we're actually beyond that at this point. So my legal opinion would be that if we don't have any more to discuss on his motion, then we probably need to vote on his motion.
I thought his was an amendment.
it's a motion for an amendment to add force majeure, to revise the payment when it's going to be made, to strike some words, I believe, and add some flexibility as to how the money's spent.
Any other discussion? Okay, so we will vote on the amendment first. Ms. Jones?
Vice Mayor Butler,
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald,
Aye.
Commissioner Hall,
I'm going to vote aye for right now.
Commissioner Johnson,
Same.
Mayor Anderson,
No.
Now, can I make my amendment?
Original item's been amended with the First Amendment, and so if you want to make a motion to amend, you're certainly permitted to do that.
I'd like to amend it to go back to the 2.5, take the $250,000, do a traffic study on Elrod Road. If there's any expense over the $250,000, I would like to see them step up to the plate and take care of it. That's my motion.
The traffic study estimate was $14,000.
Yeah, but there's $250,000 we have that, but if the traffic study shows it's going to cost $350,000 to do what the traffic study says, then I think they should step up to the plate and pay the other $100,000.
I'll second it for discussion.
Discussion?
Mayor?
Yes.
Mr. Owen, just for clarification, the Elrod projected trips were included in the traffic study. So Elrod, the intersection has been studied in that, as part of that, and then probably the intersection of Anderson and Elrod.
Correct.
And so those were in the initial traffic study. Do you see anything change? Like, I guess, do we do a traffic study that's only on those intersections? Is that our objective? Do you see anything changing on that, I guess, in your professional opinion?
It would be really challenging to commission a traffic study that would encompass the full impacts of the development if you are only desiring to look at one intersection. So my suggestion to you would be, if you do desire to have a traffic study done, I would suggest that you do the full evaluation and not just one intersection. Because it quite frankly, it would take a full, again, it'd just take a full evaluation, because it's a holistic, Elrod Road and Anderson Road are just one part of this bigger puzzle. So I think the whole puzzle, I would not suggest to you just to get one intersection evaluated. I don't know how fruitful that would be. With that said, if the whole thing was evaluated, as I've said earlier, yes, there is some professional judgment and opinion that's utilized to distribute the trips. I do not think that I would not anticipate any professional opinion to deviate more than double, which was the example I've been given. I don't think it would be accurate to say that 90% or 95% of the traffic would utilize Northwest Highway to enter the subdivision based on the subdivision layout and the proximity of residential units within the access point to Highway 96. So yes, it could change, and likely there would be some differences. Personally, I would suggest that they would probably, I would anticipate them to be negligible, but you don't know until you get it.
And let me ask a question. So even if Commissioner Hall gets what he's asking approved, they've already stated that they're not going to go past that $2.75 million.
I think they stated that tonight.
Yes.
Yeah.
So even if Commissioner Hall gets approved, that's not going to happen.
I don't believe so from
Okay.
the discussion in the agreement that's
They're
in front of
not,
you.
they've already said they're not giving more than what they've offered.
But Mr., I mean, you can ask Mr., I don't want to speak for the developer. That's not my job. My job is to be here for the city. So if Mr. Henry wants to, he'd be the proper person to say that, not me.
Your understanding is correct. My client thought hard about increasing the ante to convince this body to adopt this development agreement tonight. The amendments that have been passed already are acceptable, but the amount of the funding is set. It's more than $1 million more than the development's impact. That's a significant contribution to the project. Or we could not do the development agreement at all and let my client go out there and do the 3-lane cross-section across their 1,700 linear feet of their roadway frontage. And we'll get that done quicker than the city will probably get it done. So that's kind of where we are, is let us do the work across our road frontage, which means you end up with your cross-section with sidewalks and everything else across that frontage, but then it's going to, neck down to the existing condition until the city project catches up.
So what you're saying is you don't need our development agreement to start building?
One or the other. The reason we're here is because of the Planning Commission condition of approval. Planning Commission put a condition of approval that brought us to you, brought us here. And so we've prepared the development agreement to do what it says.
But you're saying that y'all can start building and you don't need our development agreement signed by me, right?
What I'm saying is, if you want the $2.75 million, we need to execute the development agreement. If you don't want that, my client could proceed with construction out there, of the obligation. But it would be to your standard. It would be to your specification. We still have this condition of approval from the Planning Commission, so it puts us in a bit of a pickle, but this body could probably address that.
Have we made all the right-of-way acquisitions?
Did I hear right away? That's something that's not been mentioned, as part, Bellhaven is dedicating 30 feet, a 30-foot strip, 1.2 acres of land at no charge to the city for that road widening project. So,
Do we need anything on the other side of the road, Ethan?
At this time, we're not into that point of design, but preliminary estimates, it was looking at widening only on their 30-foot piece that they're adding to the right-of-way, which would take the current 32-foot right-of-way and make it a 62-foot right-of-way, which is the expectation of what we're trying to achieve.
So how, if that's the case, are we making the road straight, or is it going to move?
We anticipate having some right-of-way acquisition. If you look at the corner of Elrod Road and Northwest Highway, that parcel is owned currently by the city of Fairview. We would utilize right-of-way through the city parcel. We would, going plan north on this sheet up the green line, we would obtain right-of-way from the parcel on the corner of Elrod Northwest adjacent to that. And then we would continue through the Bellhaven project with their 30-foot right-of-way dedication up into the...
Belvoir, we're going through Belvoir.
No, going north on this plan. So up to the yellow section, Bellhaven is given 30 feet of right-of-way to the city, and then up to the red section, the city purchased a piece of property that primarily is what is being used there. There is some slight right-of-way acquisition associated with that project.
All right, so let's speak of the yellow part. If they gave 30 feet, where does that put the center of the road based on where the map shows it right now? Would it stay exactly in line with the red section and the green section? Or would it be shifted to the left of the screen? Because if they moved forward, they would not have right-of-way across the street from them on that gentleman's property and then Hurley Lampley's next to him, correct?
That's correct, and we had anticipated that with the projects that have been going on in the Northwest Corridor. There were several easements that were granted to another developer going down through there with sewer lines and gas lines that are running down Northwest Highway on this plan, on the plan east, through those parcels that are across the street from Bellhaven, including Mr. Lampley's property and his neighbors.
Let's just say Mr. Henry we decided not to do the development agreement and was gonna let them go ahead and build their section of road. What happens if the guy across the street says he's not selling his 30 feet?
Across the street from the Bellhaven development?
Correct.
It's currently a 32-foot right-of-way, and they're adding 30 feet of their own property to that right-of-way.
So what I said initially is correct. The road is gonna go like this, then when it gets to Bellhaven, it's gonna go over a little bit, and then when it gets done with Bellhaven, it's gonna go back.
Approximately where you see the green arrow.
Yep. That's pretty much a straight shot from there up to the red. But if you're talking about what you just said, at the yellow section, and the guy across the street doesn't want to give or sell a right-of-way, the road at that point is going to shift towards Bellhaven. It'll have to.
At the green arrow, at this point, our expectation would be to acquire right-of-way from the property to the left of that green line.
Yes, that's the Elrods themselves.
And that would be the Elrods themselves, yes, sir. And kind of straighten that out there, pulling 30 feet to the left of Northwest Highway down. And there is a slight right-of-way acquisition in that red piece that has
Two different property owners.
three different property owners
Yeah,
there.
3 if you count the road up at the house at Whiskey Fire.
That's correct. Along with the property that the city acquired to be able to do that alignment project.
How do you feel about just cutting them loose and letting them build their section of road?
My professional opinion is I would like for this whole project to be done as a whole entire project, not a piece. If we were to allow them to do their entire frontage along that, I don't know how their timeline would tie into the existing city project or to a future city project that would then have to tie Belvoir to Bellhaven along Northwest Highway. Whereas if they make a financial contribution, we're able to more clearly define that scope, put that out for bid, likely get a better bid because it's a larger project, have more competitive opportunities there, and then be able to manage that as a whole project and complete a whole project, not just do a piece here and a piece there.
Patrick, I have one more question for you. And that Elrod Road has an ingress and egress from their subdivision on both sides of the road. Do you think a court is going to agree with the fact that they're going to say there is basically no impact to that road whatsoever, with the possibility of all 832 cars choosing to come out on Elrod Road at any given time?
I think they're going to look at the traffic study that was done that shows a 17% impact.
Okay.
I think is what they're going to look at. They're going to look at what they were charged to do with the planning commission and what that financially looks like. And I think that's less than the amount that's offered tonight. That's what I think.
Okay. Do you know why municipalities or governments, just like he said about this road project, we're gonna get 3 bids. Why do we get 3 bids? Why don't we just go with 1?
I think that's why some cities now require their own traffic study. That's what you're getting at, and I think that's why it's done, which is why one of the very first things that I suggested when I was hired was that the city needs to address their development and zoning code.
Thank
And
you,
that would
sir.
certainly be on the table for that, and that's with cities that have a lot of road issues and traffic issues, that's become more and more common, but it's provided for in their code, where they just take it away from the developer and the city does it. Now, it comes with a pretty good cost for the city, which is why typically it's larger cities that, that have road issues, like Spring Hill or Franklin, or I'm not sure where Nolensville is, but on that.
So the Planning Commission agreed to approve this with a development agreement. So if a development agreement is not signed, how does that work?
Well, I haven't thought about it in that way yet, but I think if this development agreement weren't approved, they would come back with a development agreement that allows them just to improve in front of their property. And I think this board has to do one or the other. Mr. Henry may have thoughts on that, but I think if you turn this down, then you're telling them that you want them to proceed and do their obligation on Northwest Highway. And I think they've said they're prepared to do that. I don't think this board can have it I don't think they can have it both ways. They can't have their cake and eat it too, I think, is what I would say.
So does it have to go back to the Planning Commission to draft a new development agreement?
No, this is the legislative body, so the development agreement would come here.
I'm just saying that, okay, let me rephrase. The Planning Commission said that they would approve it with a development agreement, so
I think they would come back.
we
with
can't just say we're going to throw out development agreement and let them do their own thing. If the Planning Commission, as a part of their,
I think that's what Mr. Henry was saying, that it's a little bit of a pickle. I would think offhand, without having put a lot of thought into it, they would have to come back with the plans and specifications and perhaps an agreement that they are to proceed. But I think at that point, the city would be obligated to accept that because they have already turned down the money for the project. I don't think you can have it both ways. Mr. Henry may disagree.
You've got the item on your agenda. You need to take action on that item, and that's the development agreement, the resolution number. So the action on that resolution number is either to accept the development agreement, or what we're suggesting is to reject a development agreement outright and allow the developer to proceed with the construction tied to its impact study. I think the Planning Commission would have to honor your resolution that has that kind of language, which is basically an instruction back to the Planning Commission. We considered a development agreement. We got another idea. We're going to go a different way. Here you go, Planning Commission. Here's the resolution.
I think
you-
that's
you
probably
do
correct.
agree-
They'd have to go back to the planning commission, I think, at that point.
You do agree that it could, like he just said, go back to the planning commission and we could restructure?
Well, we've got to go back to the Planning Commission for the next round of development submittals. So right now, let's just say the development agreement, there's a bunch of conditions of approval. I mean, there's a bunch, I don't know how many conditions but there's things that have to be complied with. So the next step is are we at final or plats? We're platting, right? So it's got to go back to the Planning Commission for approval of construction documents for infrastructure, grading permits, et cetera.
Commissioner Johnson, what I would say about that, though, is the planning commission is an administrative body, and so they have much less discretion. They have no discretion.
Yeah, they might send it right back to us. I'm just saying.
I don't think they would, because I think then you would be, I don't think, this board does not typically hear, the development is in the hands of the planning commission. So I think at that point, it'd be up to the planning commission to accept the
Yeah, there's no application, there's no final development plan. We've already been through that, right? Yeah. So there's nothing to go back to the planning commission on. It's just that if this body, whatever action you take on the resolution is the action taken that the planning commission, is the basis the planning commission referred it up here. They referred it up here for you to take action on a development agreement. Whatever action you take, that checks that box. It's over.
Yeah, the final plat wouldn't come back here. I mean, those are development decisions that the planning commission would then decide. But I think by rejecting the development agreement, what you're telling the planning commission is you weren't interested in the development agreement, and I think they would request their final plat, and I think they would be permitted to start construction on their roadway improvements.
Correct.
And it would be their cost, whatever it costs to expand Northwest Highway, the map we were looking at that you were asking about. I think that's what you're talking about.
All right, so if that's the case, at what point, and if the answer may be it can't happen, can the city say there is a tremendous impact on Elrod Road caused by this development?
It couldn't happen. They would be, they already have their master plan. It was rezoned, they had their master plan, and they have, and I think they have all the entitlements to proceed.
Okay.
From a planning perspective. I mean, Ethan can answer that probably better than I can, but
They're at the step where they would bring construction plans to the planning and engineering office to be reviewed by the city engineer. And just to speak to the condition of approval that was placed at the planning commission, Ms. Sinyard stated, "I propose that we amend to require a developer agreement that the Board of Commission must approve prior to any final plat being recorded regarding road improvements and the developer's share thereof."
So if it's not approved, then they can't start in that language, right?
So it says
They
that
cannot record a final plat.
and without that,
Well,
you
you
can't.
can't get a CO then for anything.
Well, if the final plat's not recorded at courthouse, you can't start the project.
Well, I mean, the condition of approval was not one set up such that it's a high hurdle that we can never accomplish. I mean, that's unreasonable. So we're here with a development agreement, and that's what the planning commission asked to have happen. That was their condition of approval. If the development agreement is approved, check. If it's not approved, check. We've done
That's not
what
what
they've
I
done.
heard. Can you read that again? Ethan, can you read that again? That's not what I heard.
Ms. Sinyard stated, this is per the minutes from the meeting, "I propose that we amend to require a developer agreement that the Board of Commission must approve prior to any final plat being recorded regarding road improvements and the developer's share thereof."
Must approve.
was that a
Must
motion?
approve.
It was, and it was seconded by Mr. McDonald.
And did it pass?
Motion passed 9-0.
All right, so that makes it official. It wasn't just comments during the meeting. It was an actual motion.
It was a motion, and I think it was seconded and approved. I think the obligation of the city then, though, is to act reasonably as to it. They can't just say it's not. They can't take the position that we're just never gonna approve a development agreement.
Oh, I agree with that.
A
I think it-
development agreement could come before us that we will approve, though.
Yes,
And that would,
that's
that
what
would
I'm-
answer to must approve
Now-
in the.
Now, that's a
See, I
great
would-
point. That way, we do the traffic study, we reconvene,
Okay.
and then we move forward.
Legally, I disagree with where you're going with that, because I think you look at the traffic study that they've done, which we're bound to because they followed our code, and that's their obligation. I think that's where the litigation is that I write about in my recommendation, and I think that's where the city's going to have trouble.
I think that when they came to you, or vice versa, or however that worked, when a renegotiation was opened up, that set a precedence for us to be able to negotiate, and I think that's what we're doing right now.
I disagree. That wasn't a negotiation. I asked if they would offer more money, and they have, and it was put on. It didn't set up a precedence, or, Mayor, I respectfully disagree with how you stated that.
I just,
And we're probably not going to agree. So
and
I-
that's fine, that's fine. You know, I think the world of you. We can disagree. But to Commissioner Hall's point, even if he asks for money to improve Elrod, that's not going to happen because no more money than 2.75 is going to come.
I think you're
from
wasting
this.
your time tonight
Okay.
on that particular motion. All due
Well,
respect,
it's
Mr. Hall,
important.
I don't think that's what's been offered.
It's important, and I understand why it's important to him because he's heard from citizens and he knows how Elrod Road, the impact is going to be on that and what it faces. So
I'm not diminishing his thought process at all. I don't, even if this board were to approve it, I don't think it accomplishes anything. It doesn't move us forward.
Correct.
In fact,
But-
I think we wind up I think we wind up where we wind up. I'll put it that
But
way.
I think that it is possible that if the motion did fail, that we could completely start over with a new development agreement. And it's very possible that we could reach a joint agreement. And I think that, and I'm not going to speak for Mr. Henry, but I can tell you that if I thought I could make that happen in 60 to 90 days, it'd be better than going to court and deciding it 2 years from now. So I think that right there clears things up, that if this one fails tonight, we can start fresh.
I think they've been trying to build this development since 2008, and some of that delay was probably put on themselves, but a lot of that delay was caused by the city and the city staff in the past.
I would say more 2016 or something like that. 2008, that was a different developer. And they stalled it out themselves. That had nothing to do with this current developer.
The reason that I'm partial to Elrod is it's the back way out to I-40, and it will be utilized big time.
Mayor, if I may,
Yes.
just sort of backing up for a second. The Planning Commission recommendation, condition of approval, was in light of the fact that the city's pursuing the improvements to Northwest Highway. That's why that condition was made. And if there's another figure that someone has in mind besides the 2.75 million that's in the development agreement, we need to be able to take that back, to our client. But
I'd say the original ask of improvements to all the way to 96 at approximately 5 million is what should happen. And that's my opinion. But that's what was discussed from the very beginning that I've been involved with.
I was not involved in that discussion, and I'm not saying that that's the correct figure, but I think we're on the right track with you right now, and if this fails, that we can renegotiate. I think that's the right thing to do for the citizens and for everyone.
Any other discussion? Okay, so we'll, we've already voted on the amendment, so
So Mr. Hall has made a motion for an amendment. I don't know if it was seconded.
I seconded it, but
But-
I have no problem withdrawing if he's withdrawing.
I'll go.
okay, so we'll vote on the original motion for approval as amended. Ms. Jones?
Commissioner McDonald,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Butler,
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson,
No.
Commissioner Hall, Mayor Anderson,
No. Item 11F.
Mayor, can we take a 3-minute bio break? I'm in a situation over
As
here. I would
long
like
as
to use the
we-
restroom real
As
fast.
long as we go separately.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll make it fast. Thank you.
Okay. 5-minute recess. But I do want to say the 11F fails 3-2. Yes, we have 11G. I know. Has it been 5 minutes? Okay. We'll reconvene our board meeting with item 11G. 11G is Resolution 28-24, a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement between Locality Media Incorporated, DBA, First Due, and the City of Fairview, Tennessee.
Go
Our
ahead and put a
Chief
motion
Hughes.
on the floor for approval.
Second.
Okay.
You've got the floor.
Mayor, Commissioners, this is an agreement between us and First Due, which is a records management system. We've used a record management system for years. Ever since we've been a fire department, we're required to record our data and our call runs. This also holds our inspection data, which we have to keep for the life of any building that's in the city of Fairview for every inspection. We used to utilize Firehouse, which was provided by the county. Firehouse got bought out by another company. The county got another company that they provided for the municipalities to use for that. That company is sunsetting the software that we use now because there's some federal regulations that are going to change about reporting, and they decided not to upgrade that platform and stay with their other platform. So we went through a process with the county to try to decide what would be best for the municipalities and the county to use. We brought forward two different record management systems. One of them was First Due, and then there was another one. And since the county had always provided it, we told the county they could choose. They chose another platform that was going to cost double what the current platform did, and which was not in the county budget. The county then decided that the municipalities were going to have to pay their portion based on their call volume, which I'm not opposed to, other than we were not given the cost figures when we were trying to figure out which one would be best for us to use. So we could go with our own standalone, which is First Due, that met our needs better than what the county needed, because some of the things they needed we don't even use. So we talked with First Due. They showed their platform, which we had already seen because it was one of the ones we looked at. And I think at this point, us, Nolensville and Brentwood have decided to go with First Due, which is going to be the same cost as our portion would have been for the county. And the county wanted a 4-year contract with the city to utilize that program. So we thought that it would be better for us to handle our own record management system. So if they decide to change next year, we don't have to go through this whole process again and migrate over our information.
So what is the cost on this?
The initial cost is about $6,000, but yearly it's $5,000. So the implementation, getting the CAD feed and migrating over our 24 plus years of information is about $1,500. I think it's on the bottom of that contract, or down at the bottom. But I think going forward it'd be about $5,300 a year for a records management system. I had our attorney review it. He made some changes to their contract, and they turned it around pretty quick and got it back to us. So this item or this fee was already in the budget. We kind of knew what the fee the county was going to charge us. It was already in the budget for next year. We just didn't know who we were paying it to. So it doesn't change our budget number any for next year or going forward.
Any questions from the board?
Is there any impacts to that whole migration period? I mean, I'm guessing it's nothing, it's all just files and that sort of thing, or does it have an impact on your day-to-day for a period of time?
We will have to work pretty hard for the next month and a half to get everything migrated over, because the other software we're using, the contract with the county runs out at the end of July. So they'll get our CAD feed in there first, because that's what's coming in daily and running our calls. And then all of our data that we're moving over, they'll keep pushing that in. But our main thing is to get the CAD feed attached to it so that we get the real-time CAD information into the call for our reports.
I guess just as far as what your day-to-day is and what the fire department's day-to-day services that they provide, there's no impact.
There's no impact for that. This would be totally administration that would be doing the work to migrate that over, and it's basically sending them files to upload into their new system.
Thank you.
Would it help you to give you a 1-month reprieve on having to bring your monthly report to us? If you doubled it up the next month?
Whatever the board would decide, I don't mind, but
If it's going to be no effect on you, just come like regular, but I was really and truly, if it was going to help you to not have to do it because of that,
it's
you
all
can
right.
catch us up later.
Yeah, it's more day. Jake and I will be doing a lot of work transferring that information over, and a lot of it's just pulling a file and putting it into their spreadsheet for them. I appreciate it, though.
And you say you're partnering with Brentwood?
So the agreement that, the discount that we got was based on us, Brentwood and Nolensville, coming to the table as a group. They did us a favor because us and Nolensville are on the same CAD feed. Brentwood has their own CAD feed because they have a separate dispatch system. But they gave us a discount for all of us to come over.
Work.
Chief mentioned there were several changes that I made to the indemnification provision, the way the signature read, and a few other administrative sort of changes. They reviewed them and accepted them all. I think it's in good shape, and from what I know about this type of service, the city it's well priced for what the city is getting.
And it's nothing that I'll be coming back next year and changing unless there's some big problems, but it does not auto renew. They had an auto renew clause in there, and Patrick had them take that out, and they did. So we'll get a yearly invoice for it, so we can budget for it each year, and we'll get that 60 days prior to the yearly date, so we can make that decision at that point. But we'll know what the fee is each year. They have a maximum escalation in it of 5% max is all they could go up per year if it warranted. They could not exceed that.
These auto renews are dangerous for cities, especially when there's turnover, because none of us are guaranteed to be here tomorrow, and certainly there's turnovers with employment. But they require quick action 60 days before, and what tends to happen in cities is that they're kind of forgotten about, so you end up renewing a contract you may not want anymore, and then you're stuck for another year. And so that's why we made that change, and I'll be looking to make that change. And hopefully staff will help me on all of our agreements that have auto renews, getting rid of them, because they're just not good for cities, I find. So.
Any other discussion? Ms. Jones?
Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
Commissioner McDonald?
Aye.
Commissioner Hall?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Butler?
Aye.
Mayor Anderson?
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 11G passes 5-0. Item 12 is roundtable, mayor and commissioners. Commissioner Hall?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to thank all the employees. They do such a great job for us. I hear a lot of good things out in the, being off now. I hear more than I have in the past. And I am going to piggyback on what Commissioner Johnson said a while ago about moving forward with requiring traffic studies. So anyway, I'll let Stuart speak more to that. Thanks to the board for their hard work they've done tonight, and I appreciate you. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner McDonald?
Just appreciate everybody's patience tonight in the audience and at home that was watching our lengthy discussion on that. And I also just wanted to say thank you to my fellow board members for having what I thought was a good conversation. And we, didn't lose our tempers or anything like that, but we're able to disagree and have good discourse. So I had one question that I don't think was answered or was covered when we removed item E from the agenda, and you said it will be on the planning commission meeting. Will that be this upcoming planning commission meeting? Okay.
It will be this upcoming
Next week.
planning commission meeting. There was new information that was discovered, so it's been sent back to the planning commission for reconsideration.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure if it was this next week's meeting or the following one.
It's next Tuesday.
Okay, perfect. That's all for me, Mayor.
Okay, Commissioner Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor. Patrick, while Commissioner McDonald just said what he said about we didn't get too heated, I feel that I did get too heated. And I want to personally apologize for some things that I said directly to you tonight or during our discussion. I do think that you have the city's best interest in heart, and I do believe that what you told the mayor in y'all's final discussions that we're probably not going to agree on this. And I want to tell you again, I'm sorry for the way I spoke to you.
Apology accepted. It's just business. When you care deeply, I think, like we all do, otherwise we wouldn't have signed up for this, and all the staff included. I think sometimes it's easy to get heated, and I probably was snippy with you, and I apologize for that. I shouldn't be snippy.
Okay. Vice Mayor Butler?
Thank you, Mayor. It was referenced a few times tonight, so just to make note that Mr. Greer, our city planner, has selected a group to start our zoning ordinance overhaul, and so I think we'll be seeing that soon, just for reference, as it was taught. In prior discussions, we've had some discussions about a major thoroughfare plan. That might be something to review for future planning that would help us identify all of our roads, our future plans for our roads, keep up with major traffic counts, and nights like tonight when projects come in front of us, we have a kind of a better vision of what our future goal or the roads or access are. And also just a quick thank you to staff. I know that projects sometimes like this probably consume your life, and then you show up at 7 o'clock on a Thursday night and we just step all over you and kick you and ask silly questions. And so thank you guys for entertaining us, and thank you to the board for great discussion and everyone trying to work hard to make sure that Fairview gets the best interest. So thank you guys.
Is that all? Okay. Let's see. Okay, exciting time tomorrow. Everybody at home and everybody here, be here at least maybe 5 minutes before 10 a.m. We are going to have an exciting time, groundbreaking for our city center that we've been waiting on for a while. We're going to have some shovels and dig some dirt and, have some speeches, and it's just going to be a great time. First Bank is sponsoring this, so we're going to have refreshments and drinks and just have, not alcohol, but, just regular drinks. I didn't want it. Well, there's some people who do mimosas at 10 a.m. I just wanted to make sure everybody knew. But anyway, it's just so exciting for us to get this project. As you see, it's gotten started, but it's really underway. So I just appreciate Dave McGowan and his group with Region Homes. We're going to have a fun time tomorrow at 10 a.m. right here in the corner of our parking lot. And I hope we have a great turnout for this, because this is something new, restaurants, retail. This is something we've been waiting on, gathering spot for our community for a long time. So I'm real excited about that. Let's see. I want to welcome our new employee, Emily McCartney. She is the administrative assistant for court. So we just want to say welcome to her. And let's see. I do have something that I'd like to put before the board. We'll put it on the agenda for discussion or for a vote next meeting. Let me look at the dates on here. All right, so there's a mayor's conference for all of Williamson County. It's going to be held the 18th through the basically the 22nd. It's the 21st, but coming in very late that night. That will be a board meeting, so I would like suggestions on what date would be good to move that to. We can either look at Monday, the 11th, or Monday, the 25th, and I just want some input from the board so that we can get that on the agenda. And if anybody wants to throw out another date, that'd be fine too, but the 11th is a Monday or the 25th is a Monday. I didn't want to get too close to Thanksgiving, but the 26th on a Tuesday. The 12th is already committed to the Planning Commission.
So we're talking about November, not June.
Yes, November.
Okay.
November.
You're talking about the 21st is the regular meeting.
Yes, so it would not be that week. It would be the week prior or the week after. Now, we can't do it the Thursday after because that's Thanksgiving. But like a Monday, Tuesday, or Monday, Tuesday, 25th or 26th, Monday, Tuesday, 11th or 12th. And I really kind of didn't want to.
You don't want to do it the last.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I don't want to get it that close to a board
What
meeting.
day are you leaving to go to the conference?
The conference is the 18th through the,
That entire week.
yeah, I mean, we get back late, the 21st,
Is
so.
anybody traveling the Monday of Thanksgiving week?
I will be out of town the entire week of Thanksgiving,
Okay.
yes.
So we could do it, let's see, 25th. We could do it like on, like we're doing 4th of July, we're doing it that next Thursday, which would be the 14th.
As long as it's not the week of Thanksgiving, I'm fine.
Just have the 7th.
Yeah, we're doing that exact same thing for the 4th of July.
The only thing that could hurt, Patrick, would be if a second reading didn't have the full 15 days in between or whatnot, or 14 or 15, whichever it calls for.
It could, of course, we don't know what
Right.
we'll have, so I don't know if that's the best date though. I mean, you could vote to, I guess you could agree to cancel the meeting, but I don't know if that's a good thing either.
Or not anything against Chris or Commissioner McDonald. We could have it on the 25th, just knowing that he wouldn't be present if everybody else is good with that. And that would give enough time.
In all fairness, Mayor, he could say we could have it on the 21st and you not be here. But that's not, I mean, I'm not saying he's saying that, I'm just saying. I'm just telling you.
Is it something that has to be decided tonight? Can we?
Okay, what was in Utah?
Yep.
Hey, I'm good with that. What was told to me to ask tonight is to come up with a date, and then we would put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
I think you just do that the 14th. I'll be traveling Thanksgiving week as well, so.
So,
Just put it on there for the 14th.
okay, so,
If something has to be changed, we've got time to change it again.
okay, so Rachel, if we could put on the agenda for next meeting to move the meeting from the, that was on the 21st to the 14th of November. Okay. And like others have said, it's been a long night. I appreciate those of you who've stuck around with us and those at home and staff. I know that y'all work really hard. I've been in some of those meetings. I know how hard you work, and I appreciate everything you do. I have to vote the way I feel like I need to honor our citizens. And I'm not saying that the ones who vote opposite me aren't, because they have their valid reasons for voting the way they do. We're not always going to agree, but if we had good dialogue, good discussion, I feel like we pretty much covered everything that could be covered on this whole topic. So, the vote is the way it is, and sometimes it doesn't go the way I vote, and sometimes it doesn't go the way the others vote. But as long as we, have good discussion and we come up with a of a solution than, or heading towards a solution, I feel like we've done a good job. So I appreciate all the staff and all the hard work you do. And with that, like I always say, please help to not throw out trash and keep it picked up so we can keep Fairview beautiful. And, one other thing. There is the Fairview Economic Development Department is putting on a monthly coffee starting on June 12th. I believe that's a Wednesday at 8:30 a.m. Right here at City Hall. So we're going to, I guess, it's going to highlight businesses and prospective businesses for our community. So if you're able to come to that, it's 8:30 a.m. on June 12th. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.